Alrighty, welcome on in everybody to the Central Committee stream with your host Mike from PA. We are live once again. How is everybody doing today? We are here to do some nuance about China. I just want you to know, listen, there are only 88 infrastructure projects going on in Somalia after a $30 million no strings attached grant was given last summer. We need to do a little bit more nuance and talk about how, I don't know exactly about what, but eventually we will get to it. We will eventually make a point. But the most important thing to remember is that Mike, he's talking. Wait, Tectone was banned? Can we limit the intro to one international per day? It was on random. It was on random. So if you got more than one, that's just what the internet was feeling like. Wait, Tectone got banned? Also, Mexico's left-wing president, Claudia Sheinbaum, who has 80% approval, has officially recognized Palestine as a state and welcomed the Palestinian ambassador. This is very symbolic because Sheinbaum is Jewish. She supports Palestinian human rights and criticized Israel's attacks. Now, honestly, Sheinbaum could be better. Like, here's kind of the crisis we're in right now, and I think it's very valid. In all seriousness, I do want to criticize China for a second here. My number one concern with Xi is that he's too hands-off. And what I mean by that is, I think he should directly confront the United States a little bit more. And the reason why I say that is because I think it's an opportunity. I don't think it means that they need to fight the United States. God forbid. I would never want that to happen. I want no war between China and the United States. But I do think they should confront the United States a little bit more. And I know why they're not doing it, because China doesn't feel strong enough. They don't feel like they're strong enough to take on the U.S. And they're probably right, at least in a way that doesn't result in a long-term grinding conflict. And that would be horrifying. So China is trying to build up international institutions as the means of settling disputes. But the United States is shitting all over it. So it's like pointless at this point. And the fact that they haven't escalated their sanctions against Israel. They haven't, threatened to provide weapons to resistance groups. Just there needs to be some sort of increase beyond just like diplomatic support and hosting Palestinian factions at a summit and calling what Israel does a genocide and things like that. There has to be more. And I think that China has adopted basically what amounts to the prime directive from Star Trek, which is just like, what goes on in your country isn't our problem. It's not our responsibility. It's not our right to go around and intervene in countries and interfere with their politics. And like, I get that. I really, really do. I understand that kind of hands-off approach. I really do. I understand, like, looking at what has happened to what the United States has done and how the United States has done tremendous damage to itself and the world by meddling. I get it. And a lot of that is like, they don't want to be meddled against themselves. So, they're promoting this non-interventionist strat to get intervention avoided against them. And it just won't work. The only thing that works with the United States is strength. That's it. It's just never gonna work. And like, look at what's happening with Africa, right? China comes in and is providing mutually beneficial trade agreements to help develop Africa, right? And how is that attacked? It's attacked because an industrial accident happens that causes an environmental catastrophe, which will happen whenever you have industrial processes going on. Accidents and spills are going to happen. There's going to be corrupt Chinese nationals that are in Africa doing fucked up shit. You're going to have, anytime you have these deals, you're going to have these negative outcomes that can be highlighted, right? Nobody's going to care about the 90 fucking projects to develop Africa's infrastructure or to provide mutually beneficial trade, right? Or nobody's going to listen to African leaders when they say, we love what China's doing here and they respect us, right? Because the kind of Western chauvinism is, I live in a Western country, therefore I'm better at judging what's going on in Africa than Africans who live in Africa, right? Like, that kind of diaspora chauvinism is so overwhelming. And I'm not somebody who understands what is going on in every African country. I couldn't. That would be impossible. I would be lying to you if I said. But one thing I do want to say is I don't trust any narrative that's coming out here going, we need to criticize China. In the year of our Lord 2025, anybody who comes out and is saying that shit while Donald fucking Trump is supporting a goddamn genocided Gaza and they're leading with, we need to have more nuance with China, that person is suspect, literally. And I will never change my mind on this. Sorry, guys. This is a firmly held belief. I have a lot of criticisms of China, and I agree with a lot of nuanced takes on China. And I consider Xi not to be my ideal fucking Chinese leader. Okay, he isn't. But the idea that the thing that we need most right now is more critiques of China is fucking unhinged. I caught up with an old friend of mine from Alberta the other day who was saying things about how China is meddling in Canadian elections and exerting undue influence, and their way of life is fundamentally incompatible with Canadians. Insane opinion. Actually insane opinion. You know what's incompatible with Canadian way of life? Donald Trump. Once again, the number one threat to Canada is the United States of America, not China, and it never will be China. Do you have to understand the insane... and by the way, I don't even want to fight with other lefties, you know. I really don't. Even when people like call me racist or whatever, I don't even care. I don't even care. I don't even want to fight with them, you know. I don't even want to. We're in a moment of like actual fascism happening in our country and in the Western world, and people, you know, yeah, you have dumb takes on China, yeah, you're a kid, yeah, you're an anarchist, okay, whatever. I'm not even mad at you. Call me a racist. Do whatever you need to do to feel better about yourself. It's just insane. It's just a stupid thing to do right now. Like, I just don't even care. I don't even care. Like, it's just like somebody calling me racist on the internet. I have to like respond to it and say that's of course ridiculous. But I'd rather educate you guys on why I think what I think, right? Like the USAID is a terrorist organization. We had a video, a stream the other day where I talked about how USAID is literally working with special forces to try to find whatever a Chinese project is being done in Africa so they can destroy it, so they could disrupt it. And I do consider it part of my mandate as an American leftist to defend China from the unbelievable bullshit that's being spread about them constantly. And the reason why I say that is not because I think of China as the ideal socialist society. It's not. You can't disagree with the tremendous progress that is being made in China. There's no debating that. But there's also no debating that they have a long ways to go. And I see encouraging things that are happening. I'm in Saskatchewan, and our premier is more focused on Chinese tariffs and not American tariffs. Like, it's insane. And the right-wing farmers here are so brain broken that they eat up the propaganda against the Chinese, but are like foaming about becoming the 51st state. And I'm like, how do you not see it's the same picture? The Chinese tariffs against, I mean, like Canada, you have to understand something about Canada. Canada is the 51st state. That's why this hurts so much. Like, that's why it hurts so much. You guys are the 51st state. Yeah, China forgives 23 loans for 17 African countries, expands win-win trade and infrastructure project. I mean, yeah. But again, China is trading with these countries. That means that China is evil. Like, that's literally just the way people approach this kind of stuff. Oh, wow, what a surprise. Right on the day the US and the USA resume utter genocide bombings, the CIA start posting about China not helping Palestinians enough. Yeah, I know. The United States, it's a way of redirecting your own blame. We can't even stop our own government from doing a genocide. So instead of taking the blame on ourselves and feeling the tremendous shame that we deserve to feel because we failed to stop it, and I know a lot of other people have, and I'm not saying that people haven't sacrificed more than me. They have. A lot of people are suffering right now for all they did to fight for Palestine. But we as a movement are not strong enough to stop it. So we've got to blame China, even though China has absolutely nothing to do with Israel except for the tiniest amount of like trade, commercial trade. China wants a larger consumer base so it lifts nations up. China wants subjects so it destroys and weakens. Both are selfish, but China is pragmatically better for the world. How the hell is China developing Africa bad for Africa? Unless you are some sort of chauvinist racist. What, you think that you think the gold that's in these countries is going to be left there, or is it going to be the status quo, which is stolen by the West? If you want Africa to develop, it has to develop its economy so that it has economic clout. Saudi Arabia was basically a backward country until the United States developed its oil industry. And now it's one of the most clouded countries in the world. Why? Because they developed their economy. Now, personally, I think the Saudi Arabian model sucks ass. But that's what happens. That's the best case scenario for a US ally. And the thing about China is, I don't expect China to be like angels. I'm not a dumbass. I'm not orientalizing China. I expect China to act in its rational best interest. But I also see and watch and see what they say and what they do. And the evidence points to China being much more beneficial for the world, especially for Africa and Latin America, than what the United States and the West is. And so that's the game. This is the reality. Either you are a running dog and supporter of Western imperialism, or you're somebody who believes in a multi-polar world and you're trying to build international institutions. That's what I'm behind. And I will never, ever, ever, ever participate in, oh, I'm going to help the West attack China. Like, what the fuck are you doing? That's why we need to go into why USAID is a terrorist organization. I feel like a lot of people think of USAID as like handing out medicine to poor, starving Africans who are dying of AIDS. And that's what USAID is. USAID is just how generous and pragmatic and nice America is. No, USAID is a terrorist organization, and the more it's dismantled, the better.
Development, or USAID for short, can't be a bad thing, right? Well, as is usual with well-intentioned American institutions, there's another less savory side.
Those are poppy flowers.
The presence of the United States as a leading power in the free world is involved in your work directly. The people who are opposed to aid...
Hassan needs to more forcefully say USAID is bad. He won't. And that's fine, because it's optically not good for you. This is a situation where the truth is not optically good, which I'm fine with. But I also don't want people to pretend like it's some sort of good organization. Here's Claudia Sheinbaum, president of Mexico. Could there be a very soon a disappearance is expected, the eventual closure of this agency of the United States government that has been dedicated well to financing, in the case of Mexican above all, the groups opposed to the fourth transformation in that sense? I want to ask your opinion, Madam President, especially if we take into account that the last 6-year term of President Lopez Obrador and currently USAID continue to finance opposition groups. The particular case of Mexicans Against Corruption and the impunity that this organization, founded by the businessman Claudio Gonzalez Guajardo, and also several media corporations and organizations that are dedicated to generating supposed investigations that in reality, many of them are lies. And in this context, remember that the unit itself, Financial Intelligence, documented that USAID gave $96 million to Mexicans against corruption and impunity in the last 6-year term, and these were used precisely to have a political impact, which is prohibited by Mexican laws for foreign governments to finance groups with political interests, and also in that sense to ask if foreign financing should not be ended already. So in other words, the United States spent nearly $100 million to try to undermine AMLO and the Mexican left in Mexico. And these motherfuckers want me to pretend that, oh yeah, no, what we're really missing right now is nuance on China. Fuck you. Let's say the reason why they want to close it is another. They say they have this to groups, even communists believe, they say, okay, this translation is too slow. The reason is the other way around. This agency has financed from research projects to groups in government. In the case of Mexico, that Mexicans for Corruption have had demonstrated support from this agency. And how is it? Okay, this translation is too fucking slow. Let me speed it up so I can actually read. Okay. So in that sense, the United States wants to help development. It wants to help. Well, it should be transparent. No, because we do believe that the United States should help. For example, to give support in investments that allow for development so that the root cause of migration is not addressed, but in a transparent and in any case direct way, as Mexico does with welfare programs directly. But USAID has so many things that in truth, it is better than the close. In any case, there's going to be aid for different types. They should open other types of channels. Now, of course, President Trump is also talking about the issue. The big issue is taking. Okay. The reason they want to close it is another. They claim they were financing so-called communist groups. The justification is backwards. USAID has so many things that in truth, it is better that they close it. Okay. Jesus Christ. Sorry, the translation was super fucking scuffed, so I couldn't understand what she was saying. But basically, what Claudia Sheinbaum is saying is USAID is actually a tool of American imperialism. But Trump is saying they're closing it because it's funding left-wing groups, which is actually fucking hilarious and stupid. But overall, it's probably good that they close it. Okay, moving on.
You should realize that this is a very powerful source of strength for us. It permits us to exert influence for the maintenance of freedom. If we were not so heavily involved, our voice would not speak with such vigor. And as we do not want to send American troops to a great many areas where freedom may be under attack, we send you.
USAID, established in 1961 under President John F. Kennedy, was framed as a humanitarian organization aimed at promoting social and economic development in the Global South. In reality, it was just another piece of a larger Cold War strategy. The Foreign Assistance Act of 1961 centralized foreign aid under USAID, and explicitly meant to oppose Soviet influence through economic diplomacy. This soft power approach was in reality a cover for humanitarian programs to serve as tools to advance US geopolitical interests. As Lyndon B. Johnson later admitted, food aid was meant to redirect recipient spending for military equipment or security purposes. A perfect example of this is Johnson's Food for Peace program, which was meant to discourage countries from accepting any help from the USSR rather than focus on helping the hungry or starving. Necessary famine aid for India wasn't provided until India agreed to stop criticizing the US war on Vietnam. While USAID claimed to support self-reliance, its official reasoning prioritized counteracting drivers of violence and expanding democracy and free markets, badly masked foreign language objectives that ultimately serve American capital interests. Post 9/11, USAID saw a budget surge, a 70% increase from 2001 to 2003, which tied the development to US military objectives, meaning national security, which just goes to show how little good USAID aimed to do in the first place. After the illegal and undemocratic dissolution of the USSR, USAID shifted its focus to sustainable development, meaning tailoring aid to neoliberal reforms. It targeted post-Soviet states to establish functioning democracies, but only if that democracy functions in US economic interests. This is something I've covered in my Poland and Romania videos here. By the 2000s, the agency funded attempts to rebuild the governments the US destroyed in Afghanistan and Iraq, while framing its loose and ineffectual poverty reduction programs as addressing the root causes of instability, rather than, the illegal American invasions. The Trump regime has, as of this video, practically abolished USAID, justifying it as a major cost-cutting measure. This has accidentally also meant freezing American programs critical to countering China's Belt and Road Initiative, for example, amongst other covert American actions. Let's take a look at some, shall we? Back to the video in just a second. Let's hear from today's sponsor, Fume. Have you ever caught yourself reaching for a bad habit?
A similar effort that is being made by the president.
I understand that USAID is a form of soft power, but isn't some of the work good? Like they don't give out food and medicine. Okay, let me throw it to you in the other way. Let's say that Russia had an organization called Russia Aid, right? And Russia Aid came into our country, and they spent a few $100 million helping people in rural Appalachia get some housing assistance, and it helped a couple 100,000 Appalachians in America get slightly better conditions. But 80% of the people in Russia Aid were spies, and they were sending hundreds of millions of dollars to, say, for example, Project Veritas, and they were sending hundreds of millions of dollars to various the Proud Boys. And they were sending hundreds of millions of dollars to supporting various far-right groups in this country with the goal of overthrowing the government in favor of an even more right-wing government. Doesn't hit as hard because we elected Trump already. But you get my point. wouldn't you be like, yeah, probably we don't want Russia aid. Yeah, they're doing some nice things in Appalachia, but overall, I think the fact that they're pouring hundreds of billions of dollars into, or hundreds of millions of dollars into like politically fascist groups in order to attack our government is probably a bad thing, right? I mean, how much did people bellyache and bawl their eyes out over a couple $100,000 of Facebook ads? Imagine if they were in this country with dozens of spies supporting all the most right-wing lunatics. What if Russia aid was actually giving them weapons and was working with Russian intelligence to funnel weapons to these groups and they started killing people? That's what USAID does.
In 1973, Senator Ted Kennedy wrote to the CIA asking if USAID was involved in Southeast Asian operations.
And that's why
Secretary of State
actions linked to USAID. We're going to explain it right now.
Time, Henry Kissinger confirmed that this was indeed the case, which led former CIA officer John Kiriko to call USAID a propaganda adjunct of the CIA. By 1970, the genocide of the Mayan population in Guatemala was well underway following a series of counterinsurgency actions carried out by a series of US-backed military dictatorships in the country. The police force of Guatemala specifically needed, quote-unquote, counterinsurgency training. Here, USAID stepped in to train, organize, and pay for at least 30,000 police officers. This form of training is best seen in another example.
So the United States of America trained 30,000 genocidal Gestapo agents. This is USAID. If this doesn't stop you from talking about USAID ever again, I don't know, like, are you listening? Are you processing what I'm saying? Like, are you processing what 30,000 genocidal Gestapo agents means? Do you get it?
In Uruguay, around the same time, USAID's Dan Mitrione specialized in teaching police officers the best way to torture people, using, and I quote, electrical shocks to sensitive areas of the body, using drugs to induce vomiting, and other psychological torture techniques. Demonstrations of these methods were carried out on live subjects, where Mitrione's agents kidnapped beggars from the street and subsequently tortured them to death. He would eventually be captured by guerrillas and rightfully executed. The Nixon administration stated at his death that his devoted service to the cause of peaceful progress in an orderly world will remain as an example for free men everywhere. What an example. Continuing in Latin America, in the 1980s, USAID was managing non-lethal aid to the Contras after Congress tried to distance the program from the CIA following the Iran-Contra scandal. By 1988, USAID was feeding and clothing 30,000 Contra fighters and their families. Despite claims of humanitarian intent, USAID's role was simple: to maintain the Contras' state of readiness. A well-supplied, combat-ready army can be used as leverage in peace negotiations, which had the opposite effect. It prolonged the conflict.
Can you imagine, like, if this was I'm trying to imagine the opposite. I'm trying to imagine, like, China has 40,000 Marxist, Leninist, Maoist, guerrillas in Saskatchewan, and China Aid is providing them food and resources so they could survive. Like, what the fuck are we talking about here?
Unsurprisingly, indigenous Americans were frequently politically active across Latin America as a result of centuries of oppression. Between 1996 and 2000, Peruvian dictator Alberto Fujimori ordered the forced sterilization of 300,000 mostly indigenous women, and USAID gave him $35 million to do it. No American official has ever faced any legal consequences for this horrific act. Between 1984 and 1994, USAID granted $51 million to the University of Nebraska's Afghanistan Studies Center to produce textbooks for Afghani children. These texts weaponized education, embedding anti-communist propaganda into basic arithmetic even. One group of Mujahideen attacks 50 Russian soldiers. In the attack, 20 Russians were killed. How many Russians fled? Religiously flavored propaganda was also explicit. D is for Deen, meaning religion. Our religion is Islam. The Russians are the enemies of the religion of Islam. If that's true, then so are the Americans, but I digress. USAID's Islamabad office funneled even more of this innocent, non-lethal aid to Afghani Mujahideen in Pakistan, including funds diverted to purchase weapons. A portion of these weapons ended up arming Pakistani radicals opposing Muhammad Zia al-Haq, while USAID money also financed luxury vehicles from Mujahideen commanders. USAID prioritized destabilizing Soviet influence over actually helping anyone and helped create the highly unstable situation we currently have in the country. Of course, that's not to say Socialist Afghanistan or the Soviets made no mistakes, but we made a dedicated deprogram episode about that here. In Venezuela, US sanctions, beginning in 2017, crippled Venezuela's oil economy, causing hyperinflation, food insecurity for millions, and a migrant crisis. These sanctions precipitated healthcare collapse and widening poverty, while blocking Red Cross aid imports. At the same time, leaked US embassy documents exposed USAID's funneling of $116 million to Carlos Vecchio, a fugitive opposition figure appointed as an ambassador under Juan Guaido's sham US-backed interim government. These funds, supposedly for developmental assistance, were instead diverted to opposition-aligned NGOs and politicians abroad, many living in luxury while ordinary Venezuelans face shortages as a result of US-imposed economic sanctions. Recently, FBI investigations revealed Guaido and his allies had embezzled over $1 billion in US aid, meaning only 2% of the aid was used for humanitarian purposes. This, of course, is by design. The US government isn't stupid. This corruption is part of how USAID's democracy promotion entrenches dependency on foreign-funded networks that prioritize regime change, and ensures that these opposition figures never bite the hand that feeds. Add to this the fact that regional media was nearly 90% dependent on USAID grants, and you have quite the cocktail. This became a problem recently because, with the Trump regime freezing USAID's global operations, many civil societies and democracy promotion groups and independent media outlets started closing up shop, magically, almost as if they were bankrolled by the US government to push regime change. Oh my. Well, they were, and I've made another dedicated video on that here. But let's take a closer look at the so-called independent media. USAID had been spending over $250 million per year training a network of more than 6,200 reporters working for almost 1,000 outlets or organizations, this time under the guise of promoting independent media. The shutdown of USAID shows just how much pro-US content out there is astroturfed by this supposedly aid-based organization, and exposes just how much major parts of the global media are nothing but an adjunct to US propaganda and foreign policy interests. Interesting to note, not one single outlet with a radical leftist perspective has received so much as a cent from USAID.
Isn't that odd? Wow, man. Well, that's actually not totally true. I mean, if you're an ultra or an anarchist, there's been plenty of CIA support for those groups. As the CIA says, if you want to make sure that a movement has absolutely no motion and is no threat to the United States of America, make sure you support your anarchists and your ultras.
Much for the independent part of independent media. Echoing this point was the CEO of USAID-supported organizations in Bosnia, who said, bluntly, if you're funded by the US government, there are certain topics that you would simply not go after, because the US government has its interests that are above all others. In Ukraine, following the 2014 Euromaidan protests, the US allocated $44 billion in foreign assistance to Ukraine through USAID, Treasury, and USDA, explicitly targeting vague democratic transition work. These grants would bankroll political work that would eventually lead to the freezing of elections and the banning of all opposition parties, including the several highly popular communist parties within Ukraine. The Trump regime's 2025 freeze on USAID projects abruptly stopped some of this work that had continued into the war, with journalists writing for the Kiev Independent noting that regional media, which is 90% reliant on US grants, faces total collapse. In Syria, it was USAID's stabilization programs that advanced US geopolitical aims under the guise of humanitarian effort. Its objectives explicitly targeted regime change, focusing on demilitarizing Syria, reorienting its government towards a pro-US foreign policy, and ensuring it does.
Holy shit, this is based. Journalists at Voice of America were just informed they've been put on administrative leave. 2 people there told me this went to all full-time employees. Voice of America is effectively shut down from this moment. This is one of those things where it's really, really Jada Pondon. This is where it's really hard to analyze. Because on the one, this is incredible. It's incredible because this is the type of stuff that is America's strength in the world. This is what makes American power so hard to counter, because there's just so much pablum that's out there that flows to the top of Google whenever you talk about any subject. Destroying Voice of America is really bad for America as far as a global hegemon. And so it's like, what explains this? How can we analyze this and understand it? Why does Donald Trump and the people in his administration, why do they believe that shutting down Voice of America is actually going to make America stronger? And I come back with a response that is honest to God. I'm really concerned, actually. I think I consider this to be something that is good in the long term, but bodes very poorly in the short term, because it means that they're so profoundly incompetent and stupid that they're believing their own bullshit. It's like one thing for you to, use QAnon to get your message out, to get supporters of like kind of cranks and weirdos online, right? That's one thing. But actually believing QAnon, That's quite another. And this is basically Donald Trump is like a QAnon believer. He's a like shock doc. He's doing shock doctrine on American institutions. And like, if you study history, there's one thing that will continually start to pop up more and more and more over the course of your study of history, which is that the more effective and centralized a polity is, the stronger it is. This continually pops up over and over. What made the absolutist monarchies more powerful than the more, decentralized feudal monarchies of the early Middle Ages? Well, because it was more centralized, they could command more resources. They could command larger armies. They could effectively wage war better. I think no one in the Trump administration understands how American power actually works. I mean, they have Tulsi Gabbard, who is a CIA agent. Effectively, she's actually an army intelligence agent. But I just say, by the way, when I say CIA agent, this is something that I just want to clarify. When I say CIA agent, I'm talking about the entire American intelligence apparatus. I'm talking about the NSA. I'm talking about the CIA. I'm talking about the DIA. I'm talking about, FBI counterintelligence. I'm talking about all of the American and, political police and, intelligence operations. I'm not just talking about the CIA itself. I'm talking about all of American political work and, USAID, all that shit. Voice of America, all of that is included when I say CIA. Okay, I'm just using CIA because that's what normies think of. And so for me, okay, like, I don't think that your opponent is an idiot is ever a good response or ever is good analysis. I think that's terrible analysis in general. I think hey, Casey, what's up, by the way? Stephen Miller and Rubio definitely understand how the state works. Well, I don't think Rubio agrees with what they're doing, is what I'm saying. So you should never say, oh, they're idiots. That explains it. No. I think what this is a certain type of realignment. I've talked about this before. And this bodes really, okay, if I'm being honest, one of the things I've always said during the crisis in Palestine is that I think people are too optimistic. I think people are too optimistic about Gaza. I think right now you are too optimistic about Gaza. And the reason why I say that is because Palestinians don't have any allies. And that's what it looks like when you get genocided. Like, a successful genocide is the international isolation of a nation. And I feel like this is effectually what is happening, which is the United States is going to Russia and saying, we will give you what you want in Ukraine and Eastern Europe if you give us what we want in Iran and Israel, or at least become neutral against Iran and do nothing to stop what we're doing in Israel. That's what I think is happening here. That's how I understand it. And at the moment, liberals in America don't care. Liberals in America don't care to protect even Americans speaking out on this issue, let alone Palestinians in Palestine. And for the very beginning of this conflict, I have said that you need to hold in your heart the realization that genocide is probable. And how would you react if that's what you knew? And that's what I feel right now. And the answer to that question, chat, is I am deeply reflecting every single day about what to do next. Every day, I honestly spend a lot of time sitting and thinking about what to do next. It's pessimism of the intellect, optimism of the will, man. The opposite. And I legitimately, the thing that really concerns me is I just don't feel like China is really... The thing about China is in a moment where they say a lot of the right things, but they don't back those words up with enough action. So they're not going to save us. China is very much concerned about protecting China above everything. And that is my big criticism of the Chinese Communist Party right now, the Communist Party of China, is they are too parochial. They are too concerned with their own security, their own development, and they're leaving a lot of the rest of the world to the wolves. And that is a problem. That is a real nuanced critique of China. That is my problem. I wish China was more of a global leader than they are. And I feel like they think that the USSR was overextended, and that's part of why it fell. The USSR didn't spend enough on butter, too much on guns. And China is like, we're going we're gonna stuff butter down our people's throats until we have everybody living a solid, dignified life. That's gonna give us our security, right? That is the Chinese. The Chinese look at what happened to the USSR and they say, we're not gonna fall because our people want blue jeans. We're gonna have every blue jean factory in China. We're gonna have so many blue jeans, they're gonna be drowning in blue jeans. That's the Chinese overcorrection. And they have underestimated the importance of engaging with the rest of the world. It's a very communist thing to do, which is like, well, if we just are fair with everybody and we trade fairly with other people and we're mutually beneficial, then their material interest will be in being kind to us. That is like such a communist mistake to make. And it's like, no, man, people are more motivated than just by material interest alone. They have a lot of like spooks that occupy false consciousness. China understands that the end game is climate change. That's why they don't put too much weight in helping countries that are suffering from US and Russian fascism. It's sad, but no, I mean, they are operating purely cold-bloodedly for the survival of the 1.5 billion people of China. That is literally the way they operate. They operate from a position of the stronger China is, the better we'll be able to operate in the future. And so we're going to focus on doing what we need to do now domestically to make China as powerful and as secure as possible. And we're going to be fair and mutually beneficial with other countries, but we're not going to be involved. And honest, and they're going to stand up for the right thing internationally, but accept. And here's the problem with China. And here's a really good criticism of China. We're doing Criticize China Day for me, which is they will oftentimes say, hey, what do you think about Taiwan? Is Taiwan part of China? Okay, that's what we want to hear. You say it's one China policy? Okay. And they have a preoccupation with Taiwan. And here's the thing. If you analyze China's geostrategic reality, they should be obsessed with Taiwan, because Taiwan represents a strategic dagger to their throat. Until Taiwan is resolved, they are incredibly vulnerable. Taiwan is the best staging outpost for an invasion or physical threat to China that you could ever imagine. Of course they're preoccupied with it. Can you imagine if there was a hostile country that was bristling with arms that was on fucking Manhattan Island? Like, of course we'd be freaking out. And, you know, Mao made a bunch of boneheaded mistakes in foreign policy, trying to, you know, basically, you know, it was a different time of, you know, a rivalry with the Soviet Union because of the Sino-Soviet split. So he tried to play the US off against the Soviet Union, and that was a fucking mistake. I honestly blame the USSR for that, but let's, you know, it is what it is. Oh yeah, I did see the story about Tesla accounting. Anyway, let's go back to this. Let's finish the USAID video, and then we're going to talk about like other shit.
Doesn't threaten Israel. Investigative reporting reveals deeper ties. USAID contracted Creative Associates International for projects like Zunio, a Cuban Twitter clone designed to foment dissent, under the same civil society support program used to destabilize Syria, Libya, and Egypt. CAI's parent company, Creative Associates International Inc., they're not very creative, operated as a CIA front in Pakistan.
So the JFK papers were released the other day, and I'm waiting for somebody to do a good sit down on it before I talk about it. But one thing I did see is that there were 1,800 companies that were CIA fronts, or at least willing to offer themselves as CIA fronts. 1,800 companies. That's crazy.
Collaborating with Blackwater mercenaries to conduct cross-border raids into Afghanistan. It's all interconnected. In other attempts, USAID framed its covert regime change efforts in Cuba under the guise of public health. Documents and operatives reveal that USAID explicitly viewed HIV prevention workshops as a perfect excuse to mask anti-government activities, attempting to leverage medical outreach to infiltrate Cuban society.
USA used HIV prevention workshops in Cuba as a front to foment dissent. USAID considered HIV prevention workshops the perfect excuse for covert anti-government activities, AP found. And people are like, man, I can't believe you don't like USAID. That's insane. That is evil. That's enemy of humanity shit. And the reason is because I want to prevent the spread of disease. But we shouldn't use, you know, medical provision to do fucking CIA shit. It discredit it in the minds of billions of people around the world. That's fucking evil.
In society, young Latin American recruits with no undercover experience or training, paid as little as $5 an hour, pose as tourists to target universities, using workshops to train activists in organizing tactics while gathering intelligence. Despite USAID's public defense that the program enabled support for Cuban civil society while addressing HIV education, internal communications exposed its primary focus: recruiting people to destabilize the Cuban government. The obvious ethical violations drew sharp condemnation from around the world. Interaction, a coalition of global NGOs, condemned the exploitation of health initiatives for intelligence operations, stating, "The US government should never sacrifice delivering basic health services to advance an intelligence goal." Even USAID's own contractors admitted the HIV workshops were strategically designed as a perfect excuse to evade Cuban scrutiny. Senator Patrick Leahy, overseeing USAID funding, criticized the agency for prioritizing contractor profits over its humanitarian mission, noting it tarnishes USAID's long track record as a leader in global health. The State Department, however, doubled down, with White House spokesperson and eventual MSNBC host Jen Psaki asserting such programs as promoting democracy worldwide, basically saying the quiet bit out loud that American-funded civil societies are used by the CIA for government destabilization purposes. Of course, not all of them, but when you don't know which is which, it's better to be on the safer side and assume that it's being used for American foreign policy interests. As in Venezuela and Ukraine, USAID's shutdown had shaken a Miami-based anti-Cuban government outlet called CubaNet. It turned to its readers for funding in a desperate plea stating, "We are facing an unexpected challenge, the suspension of key funding that sustains part of our work." That key funding was coming from USAID. Cuba's long-standing and extremely well-evidenced accusations of US-backed destabilization gained even further credibility as the scandal unfolded. The Cuban government has repeatedly warned that foreign civil society programs served as fronts for destabilization. The US scheme risked irreparably damaging global trust in public health initiatives, with HIV prevention now potentially seen as a dangerous front for seditious activity, much like fake vaccination programs conducted by the US in Pakistan when searching for Osama bin Laden. The fallout extended to diplomatic relations as well. A declassified State Department review condemned the US response to the ensuing crisis as plagued by a lack of senior leadership, ineffective communications, and systemic disorganization, basically incompetence at all levels. In 2017, the CIA abruptly withdrew from Havana, with its tail between its legs. While liberal pundits have been singing USAID's praises and touting its so-called accomplishments, the international reception has been interesting, with many finding common ground in welcoming the retreat of USAID funding. El Salvador's President Nayib Bukele, himself a bit too close for comfort to American foreign policy, said, "Most governments don't want USAID funds flowing into their countries because they understand where much of that money actually ends up. At best, maybe 10% of the money reaches real projects that help people in need. There are such cases. But the rest is used to fuel dissent, finance protests, and undermine administrations that refuse to align with the globalist agenda." I hate populist speak, but you get his point. Colombia's president, Gustavo Petro, stated, "While the press may be lamenting the demise of USAID-backed media, many heads of states are not. Take your money with you. It's poison." Since tools of empire often come home to bite the empire's citizens, the so-called imperial boomerang, refer to JT's great video here for more, it shouldn't be a surprise that the US Department of Defense employs a minimum of 60,000 people whose only job is to influence public opinion from behind a keyboard. Basically the largest undercover troll army in the world, who are very likely breaking domestic and international law. The so-called Twitter files revealed a real campaign by the Department of Defense and Twitter to carry out an influence operation across the Middle East. Another aspect of this deep control, or at least heavy influence, of social media by the government was revealed by a Mint Press investigation that found that apps like Facebook, Twitter, Google, Reddit, and even TikTok are filled with former CIA and USAID officials, amongst others, from other national security agencies. And yet, according to an internal document, USAID is frustrated by those same sites, plus Twitch and 4chan and Discord, because users are able to build communities that lead them to populist rhetoric and the challenging of US government narratives. The document goes on to outline methods of suppressing actually existing independent media, such as threatening advertisers into cutting ties with websites to strangle their finances. Later, USAID suggests directing people to mainstream, corporate-owned outlets to psychologically inoculate themselves against inconvenient facts that challenge US hegemony. This so-called pre-bunking, which includes discrediting the brand, the credibility, and reputation of those making supposed false allegations, is just a euphemism for a policy of the state censoring or trying to censor media it can't control, and those
DoorDash and Clara have signed a deal where customers could choose to pay for food deliveries in interest-free installments or deferred options aligned with payday schedules. Bro, people are layawaying your delivery. Okay, first, let me just say this. As somebody who, okay, I like restaurants. This is my biggest white man vice. Is I'm like Nandre. We like food. We like going to really nice restaurants not based on their cost, but based on how they taste. Okay, that's the number one thing I care about. Okay, I love food. Okay, this is true. Fat Mike is here. As somebody who from time to time gets delivery, I will say this: if you need to do layaway, you should not be ordering delivery on that, man. You got to go to the grocery store and you got to buy yourself food to cook. You need to no layaway on delivery. No, fuck no. That's insane. That's absolutely insane. No. Like, that's crazy. And I have been poor. I remember one time when I was in school, because I paid for all my own school, and my parents never gave me like a shit. I remember one time I was like just like completely out of food and out of money, and it was like the 24th of the month. Like that, ladies and gentlemen, and I had never gone to a food bank before, and I was full of so much shame, and I was like, I didn't know how to handle that. You know what ended up happening? So I still had my internet. I had a computer and my internet, so I was like searching food bank shit. You know what happened? I had a roommate, and his mom came over, and she brought this there's this Greek dish which is sort of like lasagna. What is it fucking called? God damn it. It's like a huge thing. It's pasticcio. Thank you, pasticcio. That's correct. That's what it was. And I think they knew I didn't have any money or food, and they were just bringing that over to help me out. But they didn't want to make me like feel bad about it. So it was just like, oh, my mom brought this huge tray over. Do you want some? Eat as much as you want. You know, that kind of thing. Like that, ladies and gentlemen, that was bad. And so, like, I get it, man. I know what it's like to be starving, dude. You know what I mean? Like, literally. And I also understand that, like, part of you that has the pride of not wanting to ask for help. So now whenever I get delivery, now that I have more money because of the success of this stream, and thank you all of you for supporting the stream so I can afford to do things like order food out, I make sure that I make it worth the while of the driver. And I don't care how far away they're driving, right? Like, I just give them a fat tip, because I remember what it was like where $20 could like make the difference of my, like, how I felt for that day. You know what I mean? And that's why I have the same anger that I always did. I honest to God find it psychotic to be like Asmongold. Like, this is the thing I find to be the most psychotic about Asmongold. Is Asmongold came from a very poor family. Wasn't his mother like on disability and food stamps and shit? Like, wasn't he literally just like weren't they literally like on the dole? I cannot imagine being a family of people who were generationally poor and then becoming right wing. I mean, it's just, I mean, where do you get, like, you should have died, man. If the politicians that you support today had their way, they would have you starving to death. Like, what goes on in his brain? How does he justify that? I know he's talked about it, but I'm not an Asmongold guy. Like, how does he justify it? Doesn't he think about the millions of other people that are in his same position? And by the way, wouldn't he argue, like, now he's a multimillionaire, he's providing, quote, entertainment to millions of people? Doesn't he think that there's a lot of other people just like him out there who, if they are not given support, will never realize their potential? Like, I just don't get it.
Picture this. You're on Reddit and you see a thread asking about the history of Mount Rushmore.
I don't know. This Flesh Simulator guy is actually... Okay, I've seen him on shorts before. I don't know if he's a right-winger. He strikes me as an anarcho-nihilist type. Am I wrong? Is he like a left-winger? By the way, anarcho-nihilist is not necessarily a right-winger. It's just somebody who wants the world to burn, basically. It's a very edgy, it's an edgy take. Okay, it's basically like terrorism? Question mark? Yes. Answer. Like, it is. It's the Joker. It's the Joker philosophy, basically. I don't know. He's kind of like he sounds. I don't know. I'm loath to. Man, I need to learn more about him before I promote him, guys. I need to learn more. Like, I'm intrigued, but I'm also like, you know. Just let me figure that out. Let me figure that out before we talk. I've seen him before, and it put up my radar. Like, I, honest to God, chat, have been thinking about trying to make some more collaborations with like some more like left-wing gun tuber type people. He's bizarre. A lot of the parapolitics community hate him. Okay, that's +1 for him possibly being good. If the psyops of the conspiracy Reddit don't like him, then maybe he's actually pretty good. I like him, but he said some weird stuff about Pizzagate in his last video. Okay, here's the one thing that I have to say. Pizzagate is obviously not true. However, the Clintons are very clearly involved in some sort of pedophilic rape shit because Bill Clinton was basically Jeffrey Epstein's like one of his best friends. There's no fucking way that there's not some amount of truth to it. Like some amount of truth to at least Bill Clinton taking advantage of young girls. At the very least. I don't think they like were eating them in fucking demonic rituals or anything. But Bill Clinton absolutely is a pedophile and some sort of like rapist freak. So there's like I would basically say that's a confirmed fact at this point. I just don't focus on it because what do you want me to say? If you like Bill Clinton, then you're beyond lost already. Like, have you seen AOC talk about how USAID is actually great for the world? Oh yeah. Okay, that was a good poop sock. I deserve that. I was like, what? I was about to mauled.
Was critical of the US government.
Well, sometimes you get got. And by get got, I don't mean you accidentally reveal yourself as a secret Zionist. I mean get baited into corn-cobbing yourself on Twitter. In the drill sense, not in the country girls make do sense. So I've had a video that I've been kind of agonizing about.
He's dropping a lot of like left-wing breadcrumbs, positively associating with drill. That's a good sign.
They're not released since, I guess, the beginning of this week, Monday or whatever. And I think I figured out a way to do it. What I did was I just trimmed it down to only my views on Israel, because all of the points I made defending myself, it's like, you can't really argue against a bad faith interpretation of your own words like that. You can just really put stuff on the table. And then, like, to paraphrase Lindy, man, everyone's willing to support Palestine, but are you brave enough to hate Israel as a media figure? So yeah, we'll watch that now, I guess, despite the fact that everyone that I've talked about this has been like, no, don't do that. I'm still doing like the semi-detached irony thing. Like, I'm not gonna get into my real opinion on the millstone around the neck of all, non-Zionist Jews posed by Israel being a genocidal thing. But like, that's too serious. That's a bummer. I want to do a funny video about war.
Is he Jewish?
Crimes. But also, yeah, you get to see the glasses. You get to see what these do. They have worn this part of my face, my brow ridge. They have made it all shiny because of this bit. Anyways, it's been a stressful experience, by the way. I think after I'm done with this, I'm going to have to smoke some British Columbian weed. I am not a Zionist. As in, not only do I support the end to the incomprehensible horror of this genocide and strongly condemn the Israeli atrocities over the past 15 months, I actually don't even think Israel should be located there at all.
Oh, so you want us all to die, huh?
Nope. I'm saying that if we wanted a Jewish state post-World War II, which, given the circumstances, honestly kind of a reasonable thing to want, it should have been something like Boca Raton and part of Manhattan.
But that's our ancestral homeland.
Womp, womp. Don't care. The other people are living there now. The U.S. diaspora became the majority. You can thank the German.
Just think like I get what I get the understanding of like Jewish trauma from the Holocaust, but I don't understand the idea of, oh yeah, the best way to respond to fascism is to set up your own fascism.
And Slavs for that, it belongs here. If not in a official sovereign sense, at the very least, in a sort of unofficial sense, like the, Amish in Pennsylvania, or the, LDS Church out in Utah, or the Muslims in Dearborn. But I don't believe in blood and soil. I think that is Nazi shit. I mean, it literally, objectively is Nazi shit. I don't even have to think that. It's just a factual statement. I think it's a bad idea to return everyone to the geographic location originally inhabited by each nationality or ethnicity for a lot of reasons. Not in the least of which being that I don't really want to get sawed in half and then have one half mailed to England and the other half mailed to an entirely raised shtetl in Lithuania. The amount of bloodshed and death and human suffering necessary to maintain Israel being where it is not even close to justifiable. The deaths of, at bare minimum.
Okay, well, I've heard enough. Flesh Simulator, good. I'm calling it. I've heard enough. Basically, he's too sophisticated to be anything but a left-winger. Unless you have some sort of other evidence that you want to present. He's too sophisticated. His points, even knowing what a shtetl is means that you are too educated to be a liberal. Like literally. Like understanding the historical reality of Judaism in the Baltic region or in or in Poland, and knowing about that shit and being coherent enough to bring it up in an extemporaneous comment. No, the dude, he's not a right winger. No. He brought up Boca Raton. Yeah.
USAID's operations are
Jews, those shtetls, though. Yeah, but he was arguing against Israel. How many right-wing Jews are defending Palestine? Like, come on, that's not a thing. That's not a fucking thing. Secular right-wing Jews that defend Palestine is not a thing. Basically, in the Baltics and in Poland, they were basically how to put this? Like, Poland was one of the states that defended the rights of Jewish people the most, and they had large Jewish populations because they were a refuge for the Jewish people. That's why the Nazis, when they invaded Poland, because they were trying to kill off the Jewish race, most of European Jews were literally in those regions because they were so pro-Jewish in the Middle Ages and the Renaissance and so they had a large Jewish populations that were, integrated into society. They also had, more Orthodox Jewish populations that maintained a certain separateness and their own culture and language and traditions. So that's why, so when the Nazis invaded, Poland and the Baltic regions, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, a lot of right-wingers participated in the extermination of the Jews. Actually, the collaborators in, say, Lithuania and Estonia and Latvia were some of the most virulent Nazis in all of Europe, even more so than the Germans. In fact, they were so interested in collaborating with the Nazis and exterminating the Jewish population there, the right-wing Latvians, for example, that they were actually declared Juden-free, which means free of Jews, because they so thoroughly exterminated their Jewish populations. So, yeah. Anyway, being against blood and soil nationalism, being against Israel, that's, you're not a right-winger.
Separable from America's imperialist objectives. They're designed to counter foreign so-called enemies with varying degrees of success. Crucial for the system are people and programs who assist in diverting aid funds to corporations and oligarchs through rigged financial systems, coercion, and violence, a Cold War-era strategy refined to secure resource extraction and political compliance for the American ruling class. During the Cold War, the US appointed itself the leader of a democratic camp against socialist states, using aid to sympathetic countries and populations to isolate them. Foreign aid spending peaked at 4.7% of the federal budget in 1963, but collapsed to 0.6% by 1989 when the Soviet Union was in decline, revealing USAID's overtly transactional purpose. If it really was about poverty alleviation or whatever other positive goals, the funding wouldn't follow the ebb and flow of American politics. Modern priorities make this even more clear. $14 billion in direct aid to Ukraine for the war against Russia, and $3.3 billion annually to Israel, not to mention the many other grants and funding, but not a cent to the American public. Monroe Doctrine types say that dismantling USAID risks ceding regions like Africa and Latin America to rival powers, as if these areas were theirs to do with as they wish, eliminating decades of NGO-driven soft power. The language really is disgusting. The World Bank's Eugene Black explicitly stated that aid was meant to maintain the West's political and economic dynamic in the Global South, a stance mirrored in USAID's funneling of loans to privatized infrastructure projects in the modern day. Aid programs prioritize corporate profits over local welfare. Loans to nations like Ecuador are structured to enrich firms like Bechtel and Halliburton, indebting countries and forcing resource extraction. This promotion of democracy and free markets masks a more nefarious neoliberal project. Crises, real or imagined, are weaponized to enforce mass privatization, especially of state institutions. I made a video on privatization recently, which you can see here. This also bites at home. After Hurricane Katrina destroyed New Orleans, the city replaced 123 public schools with 31 charter schools, leading to the firing of 4,700 unionized teachers to benefit contractors, a template that's been replicated globally. The doctrine that only a crisis produces real change underpins the strategy. When economic coercion fails, military intervention, or the threat of it, typically ensures compliance. Ultimately, though, domestic politics drive aid fluctuations and
He's a right-winger. Anytime Ragebait gets posted on Twitter calling for the execution of Black T for stealing a jacket, his videos have the sheen of quality, but they're almost always the video essays on other people's work. The reason he makes videos of why he isn't a Zionist is because he tweets dumb shit all the fucking time that would imply he is one. Oh no.
always prioritize petty partisan interests over general welfare. Not only that, but the public doesn't care about this topic. US public ambivalence towards aid should be sobering to anybody who looks at it. Only 18% of Americans prioritize promoting democracy abroad, which makes sense as most Americans are struggling and don't have a democracy at home to begin with. USAID's whole story boils down to this: aid as a profit machine and foreign policy arm wrapped in a helping hand.
Why is Greg Cesar doing this? Because he's dumb as fuck. I don't know what else to say. I think it's dumb as fuck. Zoran very clearly has the momentum. This is dumb as fuck. I don't know what else to say. And this is a problem with DSA overall, is that they don't have, there should not be, what we should have is an internal DSA process. And it's dumb as fuck to have DSA electeds going across the country to endorse against other DSA candidates. We need to stop. By the way, we also need to figure out, like, this is why the Democratic Party entryism is fucking useless, because it is against any kind of party discipline. All right, let's finish this video on USAID being CIA.
From the Cold War onward, it's been about control. Starve India into shutting up about Vietnam? Sure. Radicalize Afghani children with CIA math books? Why not? Bankroll Venezuelan opposition grifters? Absolutely. Every humanitarian move doubles as geopolitical chess. Undercutting rivals, propping up puppet regimes, cracking open markets with fire sales, turning public goods into private cash cows, the list goes on. It's colonialism with extra steps. Loans trap nations in forever debt. NGOs act very frequently as imperial middlemen. Crises become excuses to privatize everything. USA doesn't fix poverty, it needs poverty to justify its existence, and pushes for the foreign policy interests of capital at every turn. Aid is just empire maintenance, with better PR. A better world is possible. A little addendum at the end. I don't want anybody to misunderstand me and assume that all aid is negative. It's just that when aid, particularly coming from governments with an expressed interest in influencing local politics, is handed out, there are usually political or other caveats that are attached to it. The United States has never done anything out of the kindness of their own heart. Their own history reveals this. If they're giving aid to a particular country, they're doing it to advance a particular interest. Now, whether that interest is towards infrastructure projects that are privately funded so that American corporations benefit, or it's towards civil NGOs that will then influence local politics so that they can bring about regime change, it doesn't really matter. But there's enough evidence to indicate that one should be wary of particularly USAID, but just aid in general, especially in the form of NGOs and civil societies and democracy-promoting groups, so on and so forth. There's a reason why undemocratic American allies don't get any media time or scrutiny or critique. Meanwhile, other nations are not so lucky. Use a bit of critical thinking. That's all for this time. If you enjoy what I do, then please consider supporting me on Patreon. It really does help. I'd like to...
Hakeem is once again... I wrote to thank Hakeem for that Cuba example. I didn't know about that. I didn't know about that specific Cuba example, so I want to thank Hakeem for that. Everybody, if you're not subscribed to Hakeem, then what are you even doing? I love socialist ideology, but the libs don't even need to suppress us. Our own members do that themselves through endless ideological battles. It's because we don't have a... It's called what... That's what losing feels like. You know, when you're losing, you turn on your own because it's safer than turning against an enemy which has defeated you, right? Like, it's just what losers do. Infighting is what losers do. The left will lose as long as leftist purity tests dominate discourse. I mean, it depends on what you mean, right? It depends on what you mean by purity testing, right? I don't like the phrase purity testing because I think that it represents a thought terminating cliche. And I think the main problem is that we've got too many generals. We've got too many generals. All right, just perma this person. If they just come in here panhandling and that's the only thing they do, then they're obviously not a real person. They're a fucking bot. We have too many generals and not enough privates. We need more privates. And I say that as somebody who, I don't want to be the general. I literally don't want to be a general. But we have too many generals. We need more people that are just comfortable with following fucking orders and doing what they need to be and like picking up a shovel. You know, like, god damn. It's just like everybody wants to be the strategist. Everybody wants to be the pundit. Everybody wants to be the critiquer. You know, leftism isn't about critiquing things all the time. It's about doing shit. He said he wants privates. Yeah, exactly. I want more privates. Less generals, more privates. Everybody is, you know, everyone walking around like they're fucking the Marshal of the Soviet Union. I organized a you know, a mutual aid event, and it's a fucking like Medal of Honor sized medal on their chest. It's like, calm the fuck down. I saw Twitter coming after you for calling out the one anti-China post as USAID decoded. I don't give a fuck. Honestly, it's good for, I like when people who are anarchists call me racist. It's very funny. It's like, you think I'm racist because I oppose the United States is spending $1.6 billion on anti-China posts? It's like the middle, you know, the same day that Israel is, you know, resuming their genocide, your posts are about China developing and doing mutual trade deals with African nations. It's like, that sends up a huge bright white light for me. If it was just a bad coincidence, I guess it's just a coincidence. You have advice for someone who wants to be a private? That is such a good question. And that's the question. That's what I've been wrestling with, chat. I would be honest to God, what I've been wrestling with the past 3 months, or basically since election day, is how do I get more involved in politics without losing my mind? Because I have to be honest with you, chat. I'm burned out on organizing. It's part of why I stream. Is that it's a part of the reason I stream is because I'm a 40-year-old man who's been organizing for a decade, and it's a burnout thing. And it's like, this happens to everybody. I want to get more involved, but I only want to get more involved if I've got a entourage of people that are going to ride with me. You know, I don't want to go in there as an individual. I don't want to go in there and try to navigate other people's stupid bullshit, you know, backbiting and internal politics. I want to change the game. That's the thing. I don't want to go in there and be like, okay, I'm picking up the phone and calling 20 people. Only 10 years? Yeah, I know. So weak.
If I didn't have a broken back in Southern California, I would spend the rest of my life in federal prison for a chance to cut.
Voicemails released by the office of Senator Tom Tillis.
Yeah, Tom Tillis. Afraid of death threats. Then get the out of office.
What's wrong with that? You're going to get death threats if you're a fucking public figure because psychos exist.
I'd like to talk to Tom
That wasn't a death threat.
And ask him why he thinks it's okay for him to take money from this nation and it over. Why does he think that he can tell his employers to go themselves every goddamn day, all day long, and sell his goddamn nation out and his employers over? Don't he know that his employers can take a axe handle and cave his head in?
Okay, that is... Here's the one thing I would say about this. Like, I don't think this plays the way Tom Tillis expects it to play. I think we all disavow. Could everybody disavow by Peepo smiling in the chat? If you disavow this guy, Peepo smile. If you disavow, Peepo smile into the chat. Okay, thank God. See, everybody's disavowing. I disavow violence as well. I just don't think this comes across the way they expect it to. I think there is a well of anger in this country. I think the one thing that Donald Trump understands and is effective at harnessing is this well of anger. And I think that to be a successful left-wing movement, we have to tap into this well of anger. And we have to stop pussyfooting around right? Empathy is important, but we also need to realize that the friend-enemy distinction is also important. You need to be able to say who the malefactors are and who you're going to help, and the people need to believe you. If you don't have an enemy and you don't have a clear group of allies, then your movement is going nowhere. If there isn't somebody to blame, you're not going to be believed. You have to have a narrative. You have to have a story that people intuitively vibe with, that matches the way that they live and the way that they experience hardship. If you're just walking around doing kumbaya hippie bullshit, and everyone's going to think you're a fucking charlatan. And you have to tell them who is doing the bad shit. And it just so happens, and this is true, that every problem that you see is done intentionally. I'll say that one more time. When you walk around in your daily life and you see something fucked up, that's being done intentionally. Don't believe me? Go stand in the middle of the road. See how long it takes before the cops show up and arrest your ass. Maybe not the middle of the road, but you get my point. Go and if you act disruptive against the way that things are supposed to be, you will find state power on your neck before you can blink. So when you see fucked up shit, that's because it's being tolerated. That's because somebody's profiting. That's because the powers that be are directing that to exist. That is the fucking case. When you see a homeless encampment, it's because the government that you live in has decided that those people aren't going to get the help they need, and that's that. There is no accidental homeless encampment. There is no accidental litter. There is no accidental waste. There's no accidental pothole. Everything you see that's fucked up is done intentionally. And this is something that a lot of people have a hard time understanding and a hard time believing. But let me tell you, years in government has proven this to be the case. They know where the crack houses are. They know who the gang members are. They know where the potholes are. They know where the homeless encampments are. They know where the asbestos is in your child's classroom. We are not lacking for knowledge. We're lacking for will to fix the problems and grab the people responsible by the scruff of the fucking neck and shake them until comical gold coins fall out of their pockets. Some homeless people do want to live outside, and maybe they're biased toward that because of government. You're never going to force them inside unless it's a jail. First of all, nobody wants to live outside on the street. Now, some people do want to live in caravans. Some people do want to live mobily. Some people, want to be itinerant. Nobody wants to live out on the fucking sidewalk with no pad and sleeping and getting pissed on, okay? Yes, some people, if you gave them the choice, they would live in an RV or a camper or something. That is true. Some people like to move from place to place. That is true. Some people, if given that kind of freedom, would live like that. That's different than being out on the fucking street and not having facilities and not having any shelter. Everyone wants to be Che or Fidel, but no one wants to be the red guard with a rusty pistol making shit work. That's the problem with social media socialism. It creates false personality and inflated worth and importance. It's not real. That's exactly what I'm talking about, chatter. That's exactly what I'm talking about. We have too many generals and not enough privates. You know how many millions of people gave their lives in order for the communist revolutions of China to win, or Russia to win, or Cuba to win? You don't just get. And that's the same thing with liberal revolutions as well. If you talk about the American Revolution or the French Revolution or, whatever the fuck else, this stuff doesn't happen unless people are willing to follow some goddamn orders and fight for a cause greater than themselves where they're not picking every fucking play. Everybody wants to be the quarterback. I need some tight ends. Who wants to be my tight end? I need blockers. I need tacklers. Oh, wait, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Who wants to be my fullback?
And his kids say it, and his goddamn grandkids say it.
Oh, god damn, that dude definitely should not have said that.
You piece of. If I didn't have a broken back in Southern California, I would spend the rest of my life in federal prison for a chance to cut your throat, remove your head, and shove it up your where you usually keep it. You, Tom Tillis.
And I suggest, you're going to have to be very careful about going out in public or talking to anybody that's real, that's an actual American, because we hate you, and we are going to resist. And you are going to fail. Do you understand me? You are going to fail.
What's wrong with this call? She's not allowed to say we hate you?
You are not going to destroy my country. We are going to get my country back. The freaking 1,000-year Reich lasted 12 years. Our grand experiment lasted 248 before you decided to put a knife in the backs of our fathers.
By the way, all this anger, a good left-wing leader could harness this. These are just like Deborahs. This is the, you know, your mom with a fucking Cabernet Sauvignon open watching fucking you know, the British Bake Off. This is how pissed off people are. If we can't grab hold of these people, then what the fuck is wrong with us?
May goddamn you, may goddamn your staff, may goddamn Donald Trump, may goddamn J.D. Vance, may goddamn Elon Musk, may goddamn Michael Wiley, and the rest of you crazy.
Well, you're not allowed to say goddamn people now? Like the guy who was talking about the axe handles. Okay, that's going over the line, right? You can't say shit like that. You can't say goddamn you or we hate you. What the fuck's wrong with that?
Oh no, this is Russia. May goddamn every last one of you in that office. May goddamn your families. You all for what you've done to this country. And may God protect our undocumented brothers and sisters, our trans brothers and sisters, our lesbian and gay and queer brothers and sisters. May goddamn every last one of you Putin-supporting, white supremacist, anti-democratic.
Shame on you. Shame on you. Is it worth it?
What was wrong with that?
Is it worth it? I hope you have children and grandchildren because I hope that they will suffer the diseases that the rest of the children will. I don't have any, so I don't really care. You're not a good person. You're not one of the good guys anymore, so get the out of government.
Good afternoon, Senator Tillis.
That's how Northern Warbeck's think about you southern white trash. That's what the ones who won the Civil War think about you. Do you understand that inferior bad genes, inbred stupid you and all your people. Tom Tillis, that piece too. Do you understand? That's what regular people think of southern white trash.
Okay, listen. I don't think we should do race science and measure the skulls of southern white trash, okay? There's plenty of southern white trash people that are totally cool. Like, we should disavow. Okay, so one guy made a death threat. The rest of them were just people yelling. Who cares? It's such a rare and joyous occasion to hear elderly Americans say anything so base. Thank you, Senator. This video has done more to benefit humanity than both your political career and personal life combined. Hey, you got any more of these clips? You should share all of them. See what I mean? See what I mean? We should be grabbing hold of this anger. Grab a hold of it and hold it close to your chest and say, the world can be better than this. Not just here, but around the world. There is a small class of people who will never, ever have enough. They'll never have enough. They will never stop taking more. When Elon Musk got to 300 billion, he didn't say to himself, this is more than myself or any of my descendants could ever spend. He said, how do I get to 1 trillion? How do I get to 1 quadrillion? They'll take every ounce of wealth they can find in the universe for themselves. They lack the ability to care about others. So those people deserve your anger. They really, really do. And Tom Tillis is their servant. All right. Let's do some HOGWATCH. These are people. There's a lot of people out there. And there is this kind of like what I would consider kind of cringe Zoomer behavior where you just take one look at someone and think you know them. Because Zoomers are so enamored with social media and the personas they put out, and they control their personas so jealously because they don't go out and hang out with people in real life, and we know that because that's science. So they will generally make broad sweeping decisions about people's personal, the way people look, and inculcate it with political value or political intent. It doesn't exist.
My medication, it runs $20,000 a month without insurance. I make $800 a month. Oh, that will kill me. That would kill my friends. That would kill millions of people in this country if they lose their health care.
We're in California's District 22, a rural community in the state's Central Valley. This district voted for Trump for the first time in 2024, but now his policies threaten one of the benefits people here rely on the most.
It bothers me when people like Elon Musk say that people on those programs are the parasite class. It's just cruel.
Do you know anyone personally who voted for President Trump but depends on benefits like Medicaid?
Oh yeah, I know a lot of people.
Trump promised a lot of things. I thought it will be more family values and those programs that we really need here.
One of those promises was to protect Medicaid, which 67% of people in this district rely on. It's the largest percentage of any district in the entire country.
Can you guarantee that Medicare, Medicaid will not be touched?
Yeah, I mean, I have said it so many times, we're not going to touch it.
But his administration just proposed an $880 billion cut to Medicaid over the next 10 years. So we wanted to come here to find out how people are feeling about Trump and his administration's decision that could have a huge impact on one of the benefits they rely on the most. One resident who would be impacted by Medicaid cuts is 64-year-old Irma Arredondo, who voted for Trump in 2024. Irma has several chronic health issues, including type 1 diabetes. She's also a full-time caregiver for her daughter, who has cerebral palsy, and her sister, who has Turner syndrome.
Valerie has her medication for her seizures. She needs care everything. And I just give massage to her hands, to her legs. I stay with her until she falls asleep.
Sounds like you take really good care of her.
Oh, and my baby is my dog.
So you, your sister Irene, and your daughter Valerie, you're all on Medicaid. And how important is Medicaid for your way?
Wow, can you imagine? We live on a daily basis with sicknesses. This is for the cholesterol too. This is also for my blood pressure.
So Medicaid pays for all of it?
Yes.
If you didn't have Medicaid, how much would this cost you? How much money?
Oh, thousands maybe.
Thousands. And that's just for you?
That's for me.
Not for your daughter? Not for your sister?
No. The medicine that my daughter takes for seizures, I won't be able to afford it. So we feel hopeless if those cuts come, you know. What we're going to do.
Irma was a farm worker for more than a decade. She believes that some of her and her children's health issues can be linked to the pesticides she was exposed to while working in the fields.
When I was pregnant with my child, I was working in the field. I remember it was this little airplane and sprayed us. But when my baby born, the doctor just said, "Uh-oh, something's missing." And when he gave me my baby doesn't have her arm.
So with these risks that you and your community face in agriculture.
Are you sure that we can't reduce the regulations for the abundance agenda?
And then to have the system threaten to take away your health insurance, to take away protection. How does it make you feel?
Like I told you, I feel like these tubby nuts in the back, you know? But why? Why when we put food on their tables? You know, that we risk our health. Look at me right now. Look at me how many sicknesses that I have. The COPD, I didn't have COPD at that time. We got all in the fields. Where else?
We're seeking permanent income tax cuts all across the board.
The $880 billion in Medicaid cuts proposed in President Trump's budget will help pay to permanently extend his 2017 tax cuts.
The largest tax breaks would go to the wealthiest individuals. Are those your values?
No, that's not right. ¿Por qué van a hacer tanto recorte? Sí, tanto recorte. ¿En dónde lo van a poner ese dinero? ¿Dónde?
In the last election, who did you vote for?
I feel embarrassed to tell you, but before all the years back, since I got my citizenship, I said I was a Democrat, but then, in these last elections, I voted as a Republican. Why? because I'm against abortion. Para mí la palabra conservador es tener valores. Like I grew up with values, you know, con las enseñanzas de mis padres.
Family values.
Family values.
Irma isn't the only one in District 22 who feels betrayed by the administration's plan to gut Medicaid.
I do think you have to understand something that's very, 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 very hard to understand now, but it used to be true that abortion wasn't a partisan issue. Abortion just didn't used to be a partisan issue. Basically, people would just, you know, they would have their own beliefs, and there was Republican pro-choice Republicans. Like George H.W. Bush was a pro-choice Republican. You know, this was just not a thing. It, you know, making this a wedge issue was an intentional political project, and it is not religion. People say it's religion, but it's not religion. Yes, the Catholic Church is against abortion, but you know what the Catholic Church is also against? The death penalty. You know what the Catholic Church is also against? Mass deportations. You know what the Catholic Church is also against? Stem cell research. You know what the Catholic Church is also against? Cutting the welfare programs. So you know what the Catholic Church is against? Creationism. You'll have people that are like, I am Christian, therefore I'm voting Republican for the anti-abortion, pro-death penalty, anti-stem cell research, pro-cutting of welfare. It's like pro-immigration deportation. That's not a Catholic position. That's not a religious vote. It has nothing to do with your religion. You have just made up some shit. But there has been a political alliance with Christian conservatives and the Republican Party, and it was intentionally created in the 80s. And so you have a bunch of people that are voting on the abortion issue like it matters. If you don't want to have abortions, don't have one.
The only people they're hurting are the poor people. People that really need the stuff. Elon Musk doesn't need it. Trump doesn't need it. And, you know, billionaires don't need it.
They're making out big time with this, but they're hurting people in the process.
District 22's representative is David Valadeo, a Republican who voted in favor of the budget resolution to cut Medicaid, after initially voicing concerns about how potential cuts to social programs could affect his constituents. If just 2 Republicans vote no on the final legislation, they could stop Medicaid from being cut.
The folks in this district have voted.
I completely agree. As somebody from the Bible Belt, the influence of the Southern Baptist Convention, which is, oh yeah, the Southern Baptist. By the way, I wanna say you're right. The Southern Baptist religion has always been a political religion. Southern Baptism is called Southern because it is a political split from day one. Why do they call themselves Southern Baptists? I want you to guess. We've talked about this before, but you have to understand that Southern Baptism is just white supremacy, the religion. That's why it exists. Southern Baptism was literally created to worship white supremacy. That's it. There used to be baptism as a denomination in America, and it was unified. There was no Southern Baptists and Northern Baptists or other Baptists. Southern Baptism is called Southern because it's about white supremacy and racism and slavery and later segregation. Thoughts on leftists aggressively converting folks from any religion? You know, I go back and forth on that. You know, I think there is a certain level of intrusiveness of the kind of like state atheism of the Soviet Union and of the Chinese Communist Party, where it's like they treat religions like they're scam organizations and they ruthlessly suppress them. And I get why the conditions that arose in those societies, how closely allied to say, you know, the Orthodox Church was with the feudal empire of Russia, and how, you know, various, you know, charlatan cults causing massive death in China. The deadliest civil war in history is a guy who declared himself to be Jesus Christ reborn in China. Do you know that? The deadliest civil war in history. So, like, you know, with that context, I kind of understand why they felt that way. The Taiping Rebellion, 30 million dead. That's a deadly civil war. The uprising was led by Hong Zhuhuan, an ethnic Hakka who proclaimed himself to be the brother of Jesus Christ. The brother of Jesus. He sought the religious conversion of the Han people to his syncretic version of Christianity, as well as the political overthrow of the Jing dynasty and a general transformation of the mechanisms of state. we got some crazy shit that happened, man. So that, you know, that adds a little bit more of a context, right?
Downtown Tokyo, March 20th, 1995.
Oh yeah, the sarin gas attack. Yeah. The name of Jesus was never Jesus and Christ. Is it a name? It's a title, but God forbid anyone studies history. Yeah, I know. Have you talked about the Hassan Bernie AOC thing? What's the general? Oh yeah, I actually need to talk about that because it's gonna happen soon, huh? So Hassan is sitting down with Bernie and AOC, and Brett, our favorite anarchist friend, said Hassan is doing a sit-down interview with AOC and Bernie live on stream today. This is an opportunity for the left to get answers. Why are they still working within a Democratic Party that actively fights against us? Dirty break when? I hope he rises to this opportunity. And I replied, 100%, I really hope he holds their feet to the fire on this. And then I quote tweeted and I wrote, I really hope Hassan the Hun asks AOC and Bernie about the reality of what happened in the 2016 and 2020 election in the US and what happened to Corbyn in the UK. Why do they believe that a party that was dedicated to defeating Bernie, even if it did party damage, is supportable? And this is the problem I have. It feels like Lucy in the football. Like, I do think, and I'm going to say something that people are going to make fun of me over, and I don't care. I think Bernie Sanders or AOC could win. I do think they could win. But the reality is, their biggest millstone around their neck is their association with the Democratic Party. Regular people hate the Democratic Party. AOC ruined her reputation significantly with a bunch of people when she said, oh, they're working tirelessly for a ceasefire at the DNC. Bernie Sanders, hurt his reputation and his legacy by supporting Joe Biden. The squad hurt the reputation by standing behind Biden when everybody else was telling him to drop out. Their strategy has not worked. Point blank. And the worst thing is, and this is the worst thing, I could almost tolerate it if they were getting respect. I could almost tolerate it if they were seizing over the party and pushing it left on policy. But the worst part of it all, and the thing that makes me just disgusted by it, is the fact is they're doing all this shit and they're getting fuck all for it. They're eating dust. They're being humiliated. They're being sidelined and they're being treated with disrespect and they're eating shit. And it's like, why? Their motherfuckers want to primary your asses. They're slandering you every day. You get nothing. What do you think about Hassan's argument that the Dems still have the resources to attack the left relentlessly if they try a dirty break? The reality is that mainstream media and political ads have never been less important in America than they are right now. And Bernie Sanders, the only time that shit works is when it's people with no name recognition. Kamala Harris had like twice the money that Donald Trump did, and she lost. Why did she lose? Because everybody knew who Donald Trump was. They had their own opinion of him. They didn't need to be told what to think by a television commercial. All right? Either you hated Donald Trump or you were okay with him as possibly being president. And like the Democratic Party has a 27% approval rating. When is like if now isn't the time, then there's never going to be a time. If the left is not ready to try to take leadership now, there's never going to be a time, ever. And I understand the risk. I get it. It could fail. Bernie Sanders and AOC could start a new party and no one could come. I don't think that's true. I think a lot of people are frustrated with what they did with Joe Biden. They see that you got nothing for it. And it's like, is AOC's seat in the Bronx worth the destruction of the human race? Like, what are we doing here? And like, honest to God, what are we doing? I know we often ask, why are they still supporting Democrats? But we could not reason through why should we still do that and then deal with the conclusion. I know what the conclusion is. It's cowardice. Kamala Harris, Tim Walz presidential bracket. Walz beats Harris. Walz beats Harris. Like, Harris literally has no juice. Wes Moore and Andy Bashir. Gavin Newsom and Stephen A. Smith. Harris has negative Riz. She's female meatball Ron. Exactly. She's less charismatic than Elizabeth Warren. Like, this is the reality. Democratic leaders willing to risk party damage to stop Bernie Sanders. You don't think they would do the same thing for AOC? Like, what's the fucking point? Who do you think is going on here? I think the problem is that no one serious in AOC or Bernie's orbit is pressuring them to start a new party. Everyone is still too institutionalist. You're exactly right. You're exactly right. AOC The people saying to AOC and Bernie to start a new party are the people who hate Bernie and AOC. Those are the people saying start a new party. I'm the only person who's like, AOC and Bernie Sanders are very flawed, but they're the only people that are anywhere near the left with the amount of clout necessary to start a new party, right? That's the problem that we have. Is I have my criticisms of AOC and Bernie Sanders, but I also understand politics as it exists. And it's like, nobody, who else is on the left that has clout? And if you're one of those people that's like, well, if we just start it, Mike, if you start a new party, you'll win. It's like, no, I fucking wouldn't. What about the rest of the squad? Rashida Tlaib. I would love for them to do that. I don't think she has enough clout. Rashida Tlaib is great, but she doesn't have as much clout as AOC. I don't think you guys really understand the differences, but like, you guys are all political Andes, so you don't really know the difference in clout levels, right? Like AOC has like 20 times the clout of Ilhan Omar among normal people. You're not really like calibrated, right? Because you're a political Andes, so you know who the fuck Josh Gottheimer is. 1% of people know who Josh Gottheimer is. You're part of that 1%. You know, like that's the problem. Is like, I like Rashida Tlaib, but she just doesn't have the clout. Do you think Bernie has it in the tank? I mean, what the fuck is he doing? He's running around trying to what? Set up AOC to run? Like, what is the plan? And I will say this: if there was an AOC Sean Fain ticket and they ran on, you know, a peaceful foreign policy, that would be a great ticket. I worry that that's not going to happen because, you know, the whole Democratic leaders willing to risk party damage. You don't think the Democratic Party, Donald Trump won't be able to run again? You don't think that they wouldn't immediately try to destroy AOC or Bernie or whoever else as the left-wing candidate, even if they won the nomination? They'd be out there trying to get Meatball Ron elected. Speaking of Gottheimer, do you have any takes on the New Jersey governorship race? New Jersey sucks. I probably do. I have to think about it. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senator Chuck Schumer hear constant warnings from allies about congressional losses in November if the party nominates Bernie Sanders for president. Democratic House members share their Sanders fears on text messaging chains. Bill Clinton and calls with old friends. What? Well, I guess he was on the old Oregon grinder with Jeffrey Epstein. Events about the party getting wiped out in the general election. And officials and national state parties are increasingly anxious about splittered primaries at Super Tuesday and beyond, where the liberal Mr. Sanders of Vermont edges out moderate candidates who collectively win more votes. Dozens of interviews with Democratic establishment leaders this week show they are not just worried about Mr. Sanders' candidacy, but they are also willing to risk intra-party damage to stop his nomination at the National Convention in July if they get the chance. Since Mr. Sanders' victory in the Nevada caucuses on Saturday, the Times have interviewed 93 party officials, all of them superdelegates, who could have a say in the nominee of the convention, and found overwhelming opposition to handing the Vermont senator the nomination if he arrived with the most delegates but fell short of the majority. I can tell you right now, the same shit will happen to any left-wing candidate we put up. What the fuck are you talking about with party and a party shit? They hate your ass. They hate you, Bernie. They hate you, AFC. They wouldn't give AOC the meaningless title of oversight chair because they didn't want her to have viral videos of her yelling at Republicans. That's why they blocked her, because they didn't want her to have viral videos attacking Republicans. That's why. Such a situation may result in a brokered convention, a messy political battle, the likes of which the Democrats have not seen since 1952. We're way past the day where party leaders can determine an outcome here, but I think there's a vibrant conversation about whether there's anything that can be done, said Jim Hines, a Connecticut congressman and superdelegate who believes the nominee should have a majority of delegates, aka we're going to have 18 people stay in the race, and if Bernie Sanders gets 40% of the delegates, we're going to block him from the nomination. That was the plan. Jay Jacobs, the New York State Democratic Party chairman and a superdelegate, echoing, by the way, this guy, again, Jay Jacobs, and when Buffalo, when a left-wing candidate won the Democratic nomination in Buffalo, what did they do immediately? The Democratic, Jay Jacobs helped the defeated guy run as a write-in to the right. He didn't say, oh, the Democratic Party voters have chosen their candidate. He abandoned the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party chair said, fuck India Walton. Bernie wants to redefine the rules and just say he needs just a plurality. I don't think we buy that. I don't think the mainstream Democratic Party buys that. If he doesn't have a majority, it stands to reason that he may not become the nominee. And even if he did have the majority, they'd still betray him. In a reflection of the establishment's wariness about Mr. Sanders, only 9 of 93 superdelegates interviewed said Mr. Sanders should become the nominee purely on the basis of arriving at the convention with a plurality if he was short of a majority. While there was no widespread public effort underway to undercut Mr. Sanders, arresting his rise has emerged as the dominant topic in many Democratic circles. Some are trying to act well before the convention. Since Mr. Sanders won Nevada's caucuses on Saturday, 4 donors have approached former Representative Steve Israel. Steve Israel ran the DCCC of New York to ask if he could suggest someone to run a super PAC aimed at blocking Mr. Sanders. He declined their offer. Others are urging former President Barack Obama to get involved to broker a truce, either among the 4 moderate candidates or between the Sanders and establishment wings, according to 3 people familiar with the conversations. And that's exactly what happened. Barack Obama ordered them all out of the race to endorse Joe Biden right before Super Tuesday. That's exactly what happened. You have to understand something, Chad. I mean, I think at this point, going like, oh yeah, we need to support the Democrats is just, it's political suicide. And it's a generational missed opportunity.
I've said this over and over again. Joe Biden was not picked in 2020 because he was the only person who could beat Trump. He was picked because he was the only person that could beat Bernie Sanders, rightly or wrongly. And by the way, for the Sanders fans out there, I'm not judging, but that conclusion was made, okay? Oh my gosh, coming out of Nevada, Bernie Sanders is going to be the nominee. And people, just like they are now, back then said, yeah, I don't think that's going to work. So they were looking for an alternative. And tip of the hat to Joe Biden, he had the record. 8 great years as vice president. And I've said this over and over again. Joe Biden was not picked in 2020.
I mean, this is the reality.
Voted for him because he in the past has been able to stand up against his party, but now he's really stuck between a rock and a hard place because it seems as if the Trump administration is going to really ask for loyalty from him and for him to play ball on every single issue, not just the issues that play well in this district. And so that might mean that they expect him to vote for things that are going to hurt his constituents directly.
If we could go back to November, who would you vote for now, seeing what you see?
Not either one.
You just wouldn't have voted?
None either.
Yeah, it's very sad that there's no political leadership that you feel you can vote for.
Maybe, they can, like you said, Democrats or Republican. Maybe they have, I'm not going to say that everything is bad, but the most important things. But the only good things is for them. To us, always going to be the good things,
You feel that way. It's always going to be the bad things.
Always.
For you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for watching our video. If you'd like to see more stories like this one, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel to get more Perfect Union in your feed. And if you have any ideas for stories that you would like for us to investigate, just drop them in the comments below.
And like, and by the way, Chad, this is what's happening.
I'm going on the road, baby. Tomorrow, I will be live from a different location. We have some incredible interviews lined up in person, live and alive. Not going to Brazil. No, I'm going to be trailing Bernard Sanders. That's right. I'm going to be trailing Bernard Sanders, seeing what this whole socialism stuff is all about. What's he talking about? What's he saying? We're going to be doing a live interview before his rally, and then also I'll be filming the rally as well, hopefully. And we'll get to interview some of the people there as well. But so that's what I'm going to be doing tomorrow. You're kind of teetering on the verge of socialism, my guy, is what people say. But yeah, I'll be in Vegas. We are not going to be balling, unfortunately. We will not be balling. My man is busy, okay? My man is incredibly busy. I'm not going to be able to ball with the GOAT. That's where we're at. Big news. Oh boy, huge news. Yeah. Play some craps with Bernie, please. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna get Bernard to gamble. Oh, I also watched a Hulu special, all Billy Bilbo Baggins. And the first couple of minutes, like the Israel stuff is like, kind of lame. I'm thinking to myself, uh-oh, this is not good. Is this going to be another like old man yells at cloud type special? And I was wrong. Boy, was I wrong. He was killing it. He had killer bits. I will say this much. I think like he talks about masculinity and its negative impact on his own personal life in perhaps the best ways possible. I've never seen a dude unwind the toxicity or the toxic elements of masculinity and how it's like a never-ending cycle that ends up harming dudes. It was just perfect. My mom was in awe. My mom literally was shocked. She was like, I did not think that this was going to be this good. I think at some point she said, I didn't think that a person that looks like this, that talks like this would have these thoughts. That's what she said, which I thought was cool. The Israel stuff is like probably his weakest bit. The whole like, you're going to shoot around him. Like that stuff was like probably his weakest bit. It gets a lot better later. I'm just talking like specifically on comedy, not like politics or anything. Trigger warning, he does start off hardcore with like there's like an entirely new type of person now talking about trans people, and then trigger warning again if you're he just drops the F-bomb, the F slur a couple times, but in a very funny way when he's literally talking about how he doesn't say it anymore. But yeah, it's on Hulu. It's very good. If you're touchy-feely, you might not like it, but it is very, very, very good. I mean, he is still at the top of his game. I think he is so good at weaving through a million different issues. He's just great. He's just a great comic, man. He really is. Has some autism references. Yeah, the Bill Burr comedy special was basically this community, like all the stuff that we talk about, pretty much. But from the perspective of a much older person. Went to the dentist again. Turns out the implant situation is like, it takes a long ass time. I didn't realize how long it takes to get implants, so I still don't have them. After the dentist, I took Kai to the park.
Wait, he lost teeth?
Alongside Fiona. Murat staying with me, my brother.
He shits on college kids too in a cringe way, but overall he was good. He's a fucking boomer.
And Fiona is obviously the mayor of the dog park, and she was just doing her mayoral duties, which is fine. Played a little bit of ball.
Mike, you didn't get to see the second round of phone calls? This was much funnier. Okay, I'll have to check them out.
While half of my face was numb, and I got cooked the first game, absolutely destroyed, skunked them the second game, came back in a big way, feeling pretty good. Glad that I did that. Finally, my new phone. I have a new phone alert, ladies and gentlemen. New phone alert. I finally have the 16 or whatever, and it's black. There's no cool color for it, but yeah, it's that process of uploading all of my data from the cloud, all of my data from my old phone, which is super broken, into the cloud took like 4 days, which is pretty crazy. Like pretty wild that it took like 4 days to get this bad boy on. This bad boy that's like super broken onto the cloud and getting in case or no case. No, I have a case. I'm not an animal, dude. Are you kidding me? Of course I have a case. Are you out of your mind? Someone says slave phone. That's so funny. Yeah, dude, you're right. Apple, notoriously the only phone that uses exploits the global south for it. Every other phone is so good with that practice, and it's just Apple. And I chose it specifically for that reason. New merch when? New merch this Friday. More like Friday. Get your dollary dues out. Get your credit cards out. Get your pay stubs out. Go to a predatory payday lender and take a fat loan, because I'm about to dump some incredible merchandise on you. This one is obviously disinformation. This is the genre. Here's the last.
Since we're talking about dumb bullshit that has nothing to do with politics right now, I want to show you guys something that would mean a lot to me if you could do me a favor. Friend of mine, close Theo, my friend, my partner, is debuting their VTuber. They're finally moving on from the sussy. And they have developed themselves a nice little, they have developed themselves a VTube avatar. And so they're debuting it tomorrow. They're going to be a VOTuber. And they're trying to get some likes. So if you could go in there and like this tweet, that would really mean a lot to me because Vio's great. And if you remember, Vio was wrongfully banned. She went on the Frogan panel in an egg costume and got banned for 30 days just for helping out someone as a friend because she is, you know, Persian. So she got invited to the MENA panel and got fucking nuked. So it would only be nice and fair, and they did nothing wrong, for you to go and provide them with, you know, go and like their shit and support people that are on the right side of things in other areas. So the debut is tomorrow. So it starts right at the end of my stream. They're going to be front page. The ultimate new monster girl. It's going to be really cute. So I highly would appreciate if you guys could, you know, boost this, like it, retweet it, and help Vio out. Can't wait for the new monster hiker. Yeah, exactly. So if we get to a certain number of likes, then I think there's going to be some reveals, and we're getting close. I think we're 9 away. Let's get it up. There we go. We got the first unlock. Look at that. So that would be really sweet. Even if you don't care about, you know, VTuber or anything like that, you have to stand up with the people that stand up for what's right. All right. Hassan was talking about merch. All right. The Tom Tillis shit.
I'm just calling to let you know that I listened to the Raleigh News and Observer, their short video where they released some of the threatening phone calls and messages that you've been getting. And I just wanted to let you know that has just been absolutely the joy of my week, listening to those. My favorite one was the really old guy who threatened I think he threatened to bash your head in with an axe handle. That one was hands down my favorite. But anyway, that was the most joy I have felt in weeks. So if you could please release some more, that would be awesome. And the comments that supported that video were just chef's kiss. They were so good. I saved it so I can listen to them over and over again and then read the comments. It's so good. So please keep releasing those. Keep those coming. It's giving me life, and it's about the only thing these days it is that you're doing. So yeah, keep them coming, and I'll look forward to some more.
You, Tom, any of you who work for him. You guys forgot free speech was a thing. I hope Tom gets. I might drive to North Carolina and shoot him dead in the streets like the dog.
Okay, chat. I just want to go ahead and say this. Free speech doesn't include blatant threats. All right, yeah, you disavow. In this community chat, whenever we disavow something, we do Peepo Smile. That's what we do, which is that's our condemn. Peepo Smile, Peepo TOS. Those are what we say when we disavow. We disavow. Also, Pepela. Pepela is another way we disavow. We also condom hummus. Sometimes we take a walk in Central Park. But yeah, don't say this shit because you're gonna get a knock on your door from the Capitol Police or from the FBI. So this is not. Don't do shit like this. You're just see the thing is, like, as much as this feels good, you're just being a dopamine slave. Like, if you do something stupid like make threats, maybe you feel good in the moment, but in reality, all you've done is you've put a target on your back. You've given the FBI and the Secret Service, reason to investigate you and get warrants against you. And don't give them any ammunition, right? Don't Fed post. So maybe you feel good for a second, but in reality, what you've done is you've made yourself toxic for everyone around you. It's not smart. Is Assassin's Creed Unity your favorite game? I haven't played the newest Assassin's Creed, but that might be my new favorite game, especially the part where you could just, you know, I just like the open world nature of it, the iconoclastic nature of it, if you get my meaning.
He is. He's scared of death threats. We're scared of the way he is going to turn our country into a by taking bribes and siding with the oligarchs. I hope Tom gets kidnapped and his wife and children and his children's children get tortured in front of him. I might come do it myself. You're all gonna die. Tom's gonna die when the bullet hits his brain and he drops to the ground and the blood starts pouring out of his head. All the patriotic Americans will be thankful, cheering, clapping. When his office blows up and everyone inside that is contributing along with him dies, all of us patriotic Americans will be clapping, joyous. I can't wait. I can't wait till Tom is dead. The time is coming. Look out.
Hey, I saw you released all the death threats, and I just wanted to say, good for them. You guys deserve it. I hope you get more. I hope they get worse. I hope you are scared to come out of your house and leave your office, and I hope you do die soon. I just want you to know that the only thing I hope and pray for every day is your death. You have taken all of the hope, all of the will out, except to hope and will and pray that you die every day. I hope one of those people that sent you death threats comes and does their due diligence for this country. Every single day I wake up and I hope and pray that you don't take another breath. Have a terrible, awful day. I also hope everybody you love and care about, every member of your family, also experiences that same fate.
I hope, I really hope that you either meet the guillotine soon or have a come to Jesus moment where you realize that Marie Antoinette asked everybody in France to eat cake. And in comparison, we are not driving fucking Teslas.
By the way, chat, I just realized we are 3 hours into the stream. If you enjoy this content, please consider supporting it by subscribing at tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3 sub. If you have Amazon Prime, you can attach that to your Twitch account. You get 1 free sub a month. That's your Twitch Prime sub. Consider supporting the stream. We are 63 subs short of our sub goal. The only way we can continue to operate in the same manner as we are today is if you guys support it. Because politics on Twitch became a separate category and tag, there is I stopped running advertising. So that was a big hit to this to the income of the stream. So if you enjoy this type of content, the only way it will continue to survive is if you directly support it yourself by paying for your own sub. Pay for your own subscription at the highest tier you could afford. The single best way to support a stream is by subscribing with a tier 3. This community does not condone violence. Is exactly right. We condemn. All right. Apparently Hassan has gone live, so I wanted to see. Okay, he's just rambling. He's just rambling in his hotel room right now. Jedi Chai, thank you so much for the 10 tier 1s. I enjoy your content. I do not support death threats. Neither do I. And here's the thing. Like, this is really my main point. Like, a lot of people say that I'm cringe DSA, and other people say that I'm a purity testing lunatic. It's very interesting that I feel like nobody really understands my politics, which is probably a problem. But also, I think it has a little bit of utility. I like that ambiguity. I like the fact that people don't understand exactly where I sit on some of these issues. Because the answer is, I want to be seen as sitting at the most permissible fringe. That will forever be where I sit. And I'm trying to interact with politics that as it exists electorally, because that's where the people are. And if you just say, I'm going to ignore AOC and Bernie Sanders as sellout genocidal maniacs, I understand why you feel that way. I understand the arguments. Aiding and abetting Joe Biden was a betrayal. There's no doubt about that. But unfortunately, the average person doesn't think that. And if you compare Bernie and Sanders or AOC's position on Israel to what we have today, it is night and day. If Israel was no longer getting any bombs from the United States, if the United States was withdrawing our aircraft carriers and diplomatic support for the United Nations, if we were not saying to Benjamin Netanyahu, we won't allow you to be arrested by the ICC, that would create such behavior change. The people of Palestine's lives would be fundamentally transformed, and that's worth it. Is it final victory? No. But final victory was not achieved in Vietnam because the United States suddenly started giving weapons to North Korea. Victory in Vietnam was when the United States stopped fighting North Vietnam. And so if you want to help the Palestinian people, the thing that you do as an American or as a Westerner is to stop helping Israel. So if somebody says, I want to stop helping Israel, that is exactly what I'm looking for. And the thing that I also find funny is there's a lot more toxicity and hostility toward AOC than there is Bernie Sanders, even though she's better on this issue than he is. Anyway, chat, we have a hype train going on. The top sub gifter and the top bit donor, they both get the hype train conductor badge next to their name. Right now, B Mongol has 500 bits. They're getting a golden locomotive. And Jedi Chai has 11 subs, and they're getting the golden locomotive. Misogyny, to be honest, I think it goes deeper than misogyny. I think it goes deeper than misogyny. I think AOC also, quite frankly, is a little bit more of a cringe. A little bit more cringe than Bernie is. I think that's also part of the reason. It's familiarity breeds contempt. AOC is a millennial. So if you're a Gen Z or you're a millennial, you have this kind of like, the mystique of her falls away. Bernie Sanders has a mystique. He has the separation of generations. He has this position as a sage almost. You know, he's got this long track record of being on the right side of issues. People give him a lot of more of a benefit of the doubt. They treat him more like a friendly grandpa, right? Whereas with AOC, we have a lot less tolerance for her bullshit. And adjacent news, the new North Carolina Senate is pushing to remove concealed carry permit laws. Anyone over 18 can now conceal carry, no test, training course required. Can we get constitutional carry nationwide? Can we get constitutional carry nationwide? I'm sorry, Aaron, you missed. The Tectone is banned. You missed. You're on the wrong stream. Tectone is banned. Also, you shouldn't use slurs, man. I renounce and reject that. You're a very bad boy. You used a no word. You want constitutional carry? Yes. He didn't get permit. He just got banned. I don't know how long. I don't even know why he got banned. SAC PSL wants you to come out. I will be there to help you, but our 100%, we need more in-person resistance to be visible. Yes, very true. I've been thinking about that. Are we arming leftists now? Why not? Jedi Chai, thank you for the 5-0. Is anybody else going to support the stream but Jedi Chai? Is Jedi Chai going to be the only one? I see you fucking motherfuckers with your work from home bullshit, sitting on your fat fucking asses with me on the other monitor as you do approximately 15 minutes of actual work. You could throw a 5 bomb. Throw a fucking 5 bomb. Jesus Christ. Green base guy, thank you for the 5 tier 1s. Irish Reese, thank you for the 20 tier 1s. It's okay. I just got a raise. Give the other work. Why should you do it? 0x808080. Thank you for that. Do you see do you see what I mean? Jedi Chai, you call these motherfuckers out with their bullshit jobs for 5 minutes and then suddenly the 5 bombs drop. They like to be shamed. Can someone message their mods so that I can get unbanned? All I did was say something about being wrong about Ukraine and maybe made fun of Austin once on stream because he was wilding a little. I said sorry. Honestly, my best advice is you not to ask in other streams. But if I'm feeling generous and kind right now, so here's what I'll say. If you got banned, message the mods on the Discord and be like, hey, you know, I got banned for this. I feel like it was misinterpreted. You know, I'm sorry. I won't do that again. Hassan is right about Ukraine. Hassan is God, and you should be fine. Attack Titan, CBDB, and then I would put in a nice and apologetic ban appeal.
Your reaction to the deadline today, and if you even think Colombia is going to apply and go with this.
Gassy Trams, thank you so much for the 5-2. Okay, people sometimes have muted microphones. Well, this is dumb as fuck. I hate that that guy's a fucking moron. Who cares? ICE agents detained woman known for immigration advocacy in Colorado. They got her. Oh, other good news, chat. Video game workers launch industry-wide union with Communication Workers of America. This is super fucking based. I'm super excited for them. GOP bill could ban hairdressers from giving gender non-conforming haircuts to minors. The bill would allow anyone to sue someone who affirms a young person's transition, and it specifically mentions hairstyles. I don't even know what that means. Hey, Eden, what's going on? Earlier this month, Arkansas State Rep. Mary Bentley, Republican, introduced H.R. 1668, the Vulnerable Youth Protection Act, and Republican State Senator Alan Clark introduced the Senate version. As the American Civil Liberties Union of Arkansas and local advocacy group Intransitive note, the anti-trans bill does not actually criminalize anything. Arkansas law on gender-affirming care for minors has already been struck down by a federal judge in 2023. It weaponizes civil enforcement by permitting lawsuits against any person who supports trans young people by providing or helping to receive gender-affirming care or affirming young people in their transition. Minors or their parents can sue for minimum damages of $10,000 up to $10 million in punitive damages for certain forms of medical care. The bill also allows Arkansas parents to sue people or medical providers outside of the state who help Arkansas youth access gender-affirming care. And there you have it, chat. There you have it. That's the strategy. Oh, you helped someone from Arkansas? Well, they could turn around and sue you for $10 million. The Arkansas's proposed law goes an alarming step further when targeting anyone who might support or affirm a young person's social transition. The bill defines social transitioning as, quote, any act by which a minor adopts or espouses a gender identity that differs from the minor's biological sex, including without limitation changes in clothing, pronouns, hairstyle, and name. They're making it illegal to have pronouns. Did they find trans surgery increase rates of suicide in adolescents? No, it decreases it. You're stupid. Of course, that's like one of the main medical justifications for trans. But the thing is, like, just because you're affirmed medically doesn't mean you're going to be affirmed socially, right? It doesn't mean you're going to stop being oppressed, right? And this is like the fascist escalation, right? The fascist escalation is, I don't even want adults to be able to control their hairstyles. I guess long hair is not allowed for men, or is that fine now? What about girls wearing pants? Exactly how far back are we going to go? That's one of the things that I always found really fascinating about the women's sports thing. It's like, people talk about women's sports and it's like, how many WNBA games are you going to per year? How many women's soccer league games are you going to? You know, like, unless you could show me a ticket stub for the WNBA, why are you pretending like you care about women's sports? You don't give a fuck about women's sports. I found a great article calling on the DSA to start a new party. Yeah, I saw this. My college women's soccer team was crazy good, and I went to a couple of those games. Based. But you're a left winger. Of course you actually supported women's sports. I'm talking to conservatives right now. All right, did Bernie's thing start yet? When does his thing start? 4 p.m. Live from North Las Vegas. Hassan said he's interviewing Bernie at noon. God damn it. All right, while we wait on that, let's talk about somebody else who was deported for their views on Israel.
Now to this Columbia University PhD student who fled the country shortly after immigration and customs enforcement agents came to her door last week. She's finally speaking out. Ranjani Srinivasan flew to Canada in the days following the detention of recent graduate Mahmoud Khalil. She is disputing allegations that she advocated for violence and terrorism. CBS News correspondent Lily Luciano spoke exclusively to her and joins us now from Studio 55. Lilia, good to see you.
Good to see you, Bob.
So break down for our audience, who, again, I always want people who are just tuning into us to understand what exactly happened here. What is she being accused of, and what did she say she actually did?
That's a very good question, because, Vlad, in the communications from the government to her, she received an email from the consulate in Chennai in India, where she's from, saying that her student visa had been revoked. That information had come up, but no direct information, nothing specifically, linking her to anything. What we know from DHS is they're pointing to a couple of citations. So here's what she was explaining to me, that she was a graduate student at Columbia University in her final semester of this PhD program on urban planning, that she had been out of the country during the entirety of those encampments. And on April 30th, she said she came back to the U.S. She was in a picnic that same day with friends and family. family, who we've corroborated with at least one of her friends that was the case, and that when she was coming back to campus, and I remember the mayhem that day, that was the day that students took over occupied Hamilton Hall, and at around 9:30 p.m., she was trying to access her apartment. She was trying to come in from different places. She says they were asking her for a rental agreement to show that, in fact, she lived there. She didn't have it with her. Her phone was dead. Anyway, in all of that confusion, she was taken in along with the protesters and cited for a couple of citations, including like obstructing the sidewalk and not dispersing. But those citations were dismissed. DHS is saying that because she didn't, when she renewed her visa, her student visa in December, because she didn't reveal that to the government, even though they were dismissed, she thought, look, if there's no conviction, if this was just dismissed, why should I report it to the government? That is why they're revoking her visa under the same provision that they used for Khalil. But she says she was not a major protester in any way, and certainly not a Hamas sympathizer, as Secretary of DHS Christine Noem has accused her of.
Yeah, so that's what the statement from DHS says, which is that she supported, and this is using their language, supported Hamas, which is a terrorist organization, and that they have video. Have you seen any evidence of that?
There is a video that's going around that I asked her about.
Even if that were true, who gives a fuck? Who gives a shit if somebody said, oh, Hamas is... Wait, by the way, I highly doubt a PhD student at Columbia is like, I support Hamas Islamism. Like, that's just not a thing. They may have at most said Hamas has the right to resist Israel in the occupied territories, like, which is just what international law says. That's just what international law says. It's pretty crazy to be like, aha, you're a terrorist sympathizer by saying what international law says.
Attorneys, they've all said that is not her. It's of a woman.
A brown woman.
A brown woman who is... I don't know exactly what the video says, but it was shared in Al Jazeera at some point. But the point is that she's saying that's not me. Her attorneys are saying that is not her. And are they just picking any video of a brown woman to say that it's me, and how unfair that is, that she has never supported Hamas? She said, look, I've signed some petitions calling for peace in Gaza, like so many people around the world, and that she participated in protests like the Women's March. And at some protests, she says, not on campus, not at the height of the encampments, that she wasn't part of the encampments. This is all that what she's saying, and her attorneys are supporting, but that she's certainly not a Hamas sympathizer.
So, Lilia, the press secretary, Caroline
So, in
Leavitt,
other words, she wasn't in the encampment. She didn't commit any crimes. She got arrested, but they was completely dismissed. I mean, like, this is pure fascism.
that has suggested that people should self-deport, and she mocked that the whole concept of deportations by saying, so that you don't end up in one of these fun videos, right? But I wonder, this young woman, did she self-deport? Was she afraid of what was happening?
She was very afraid of what was happening. She said,
I mean, like, if you get adjudicated deported, it causes it so that you can't really enter the U.S. Like, it causes like it's much harder that you can't do like visa waive travel or like the easy like travel into the United States. Once you have these kind of adjudications against you, all your future travel is heavily scrutinized. But aren't you even allowed to be affiliated with terror groups as long as you don't provide material support? Basically, the way it works now is if you say anything that somebody that was in a terror group said, they could claim that you're a sympathizer of that terror group. This is exactly what Nazis did to exterminate people. This is what fascists do to exterminate leftists all over the planet. This is literally just American imperialist logic coming home. This shows why you can't ignore this shit happening in El Salvador. That's why supporting NATO as a leftist is insane, because we're being treated the way that leftists have been treated by our government all over the world with USAID and all these organizations.
I don't consider it self-deporting. ICE came knocking without a warrant. I was scared. I knew that her visa was revoked from one day to the next without an explanation, so she left. She says she did not use any app, and she didn't.
What's the risk to you as a political streamer? It's the same as anybody else who is a American citizen leftist, which is to say, severe. Anybody who is basically a Democrat, you are under threat. You don't even have to be a left-winger at this point. In Nazi Germany, they targeted a bunch of libs too. So, like, you know, as long as you're not loyal to Trump, you're under threat. They're going to go after us first because we're the only people that are going to fight back. And they're going to go after us first because they understand that they can get to the libs later, right? This is why they go from communists to socialists to trade unionists, you know, because those are the people that actually have power and will fight back. That's why they go to them first. And then they go after, you know, they go after the other racial minorities or other minorities they want to target, like trans people, right? Because every step of the way, the they start with the people that will show the most solidarity first, because they're the biggest threat of organizing resistance. And then they'll get to the liberals at their leisure, because the liberals will never do anything to fight back.
Consider it self-deporting. She's trying to fight to come back.
Wow. All right. How did you find her, Lily? Great reporting.
Well, I have to thank our booking unit for a group team effort in talking to her.
Yeah, excellent work.
Are they actually going to talk to her? What the fuck? Can we get some clips? What the fuck?
Meantime, to the case of another Columbia student whose future is uncertain amid the Trump administration's immigration crackdown, PhD candidate Ranjani Srinivasan says she fled the country after her student visa was suddenly revoked. She sat down with Lilia Luciano to tell her story in her first TV interview.
The events in the last 2 weeks have sort of spiraled out of control.
37-year-old Ranjani Srinivasan is originally from India. She's been in the U.S. legally as a PhD student of urban planning at Columbia University. But in early March, she was suddenly notified that her student visa was being revoked.
I was talking to the advisor from the international students office on Zoom. She was reassuring me that I'm fine. And while that was happening, ICE was knocking on my door.
Without a visa, her enrollment at Columbia was terminated, and fearing she'd be detained indefinitely, she fled to Canada. The issue seems to stem from last year's pro-Palestinian protest on Columbia's campus. On April 30th, students occupied a building. That night, NYPD officers arrested hundreds on and off various university campuses, including Srinivasan. But she says she was not involved at all.
You were not inside Hamilton Hall?
No, I was at a department picnic with my friends and faculty.
You weren't even protesting that day?
No, I was on the way back home. We saw barricades and police. I think the police charged at us.
She was cited for obstructing the sidewalk and failure to disperse. Those charges were dismissed. But according to DHS sources, she did not include those citations in her visa renewal application.
If I made a mistake, I would be happy to clarify that with the state. I never meant to conceal anything. I've been in complete compliance with my visa. I would like a chance to clear my name.
In a statement, DHS accused her of being involved in activities supporting Hamas without providing any proof.
The Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, said that you are a terrorist sympathizer.
I mean, I just found it absurd. I'm not a terrorist sympathizer.
For now, she's stuck in limbo and worries the crackdown will have an effect that goes far beyond free speech.
I came to the U.S. because I really like the academic culture, and you have a lot of academic freedom, something that you don't really find anywhere else in the world. But currently, I do think that there is a crazy climate of fear in universities, and especially in Columbia.
So do you think the thing that brought you to the U.S. is ending?
Yes.
Columbia told us once a student visa is revoked, it has to unenroll a student. Srinivasan's lawyers argue that those dismissed citations should not have had any impact on her visa eligibility. We asked DHS for clarification on this case, but we did not get a response. To be clear, the government does have ample discretion when it comes to revoking student visas.
Lilia, thank you.
Pathetic.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. Senator Chuck Schumer is facing mounting calls to step down as the Democrat Senate leader after he voted in favor of Republican...
Yeah, the Liberals might win in Canada with the most neoliberal scumbag because Donald Trump threatened Canada. Amazing.
Spending package Friday, which has been described as a blank check for the White House to keep defunding and dismantling government agencies and services. Groups including Indivisible and Pass the Torch have since called for Schumer to step aside. On Friday, 11 young activists with Sunrise Movement were arrested at Schumer's D.C. office as they urged him not to, quote, compromise on our lives and futures ahead of the vote. The other Democratic senators who voted with Schumer to avert a government shutdown were Catherine Cortez Masto, Dick Durbin, John Fetterman, Kirsten Gillibrand, Maggie Hassan, Gary Peters, Brian Schatz, Jeanne Shaheen, and Independent Senator Angus King. This is Senator Schumer.
Mr. President, I believe it is my job to make the best choice for the country to minimize the harms to the American people. Therefore, I will vote to keep the government open and not shut it down.
We're joined right now by Waleed Shahid. He's a Democratic strategist whose new piece on Substack is headlined, "Schumer Says Trump is an Existential Threat, Then Surrenders Anyway." Waleed was previously the spokesperson for Justice Democrats and former senior advisor for the campaigns of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Jamal Bowman. Welcome back to Democracy Now! It's great to have you with us. Why don't you respond to what Schumer did?
I think I've been involved in politics for about a decade, and this was one of the most utterly embarrassing strategic blunders on behalf of the Democrats that I've seen. Chuck Schumer, it would be one thing if House Democrats weren't going to fight, but they had House Democrats in vulnerable swing districts who took hard votes that they're going to have to answer for their constituents on. And then Schumer led them in a direction as if he was going to hold up the vote on this, and then surrendered at the last minute. And I think that, you know, the Democrats and Chuck Schumer have spent a year warning the American people about Project 2025, warning people that democracy would be under existential threat under Donald Trump. And now with Elon Musk controlling Doge, what they're doing is Project 2025 on steroids. So you don't say there's a fire and then you give the arsonist a match and gasoline, and that's effectively what Chuck Schumer did. It's like if Democrats were rowing a boat and they had one person rowing on the left side and then the person on the right side just stopped rowing, and then they wonder why they're not moving. They're moving or they're staying still. Or they're going in circles. And this is just one of the things that, you know, people are really angry, and I think more than ever we need ordinary citizens, ordinary Americans involved in our politics, engaged in politics, because the Democratic leadership, it is clear they're not going to stand up and fight against Trump and Musk in the way that grassroots Democrats want them to. I think what Chuck Schumer did, I have few words for it.
I mean, if he had signaled he was going to do that all along, that would be different. You would just differ with him supporting it, right?
Yeah.
But it was that he suggested he was going to vote against this. What did he say in a New York Times op-ed? He called Republicans a crowd of Trump sycophants and MAGA radicals who seem to want to burn everything to the ground, and accused Trump of wanting full control over government spending. Yet by supporting the Republican bill, wasn't he giving that power to Trump and Musk? Now,
it makes no sense. They had a chance. Democrats had a chance to tell the nation that the Republicans and Donald Trump were shutting down the government in order to protect Elon Musk, one of the wealthiest men in the world. That could have been the message over the next few weeks, and instead they folded and let the flooding the zone and the chaos continue. Schumer went in the Times and gave what I thought was a totally nonsensical interview where he said, our goal is to make the Republicans unpopular so that the fever breaks. That if we can get Trump's approval down under 40%, then soon Republicans will come to the table and negotiate with Democrats. And Schumer cited 2005 and 2017 as examples of that. We are not in 2005 or 2017. We are in the era of Project 2025 run by Elon Musk. And I don't think politics is about knowing what time it is. And I frankly don't think that Schumer knows what time it is.
I want to ask you about calls mounting for New York Congressmember Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to challenge Schumer in his next primary election. She spoke on CNN about why she opposed the spending bill.
This turns the federal government into a slush fund for Donald Trump and Elon Musk. It sacrifices congressional authority, and it is deeply partisan. And so to me, it is almost unthinkable why Senate Democrats would vote to hand the few pieces of leverage that we have away for free when we've been sent here to protect Social Security, protect Medicaid, and protect Medicare.
Do you think Congressmember AOC should challenge Schumer?
I think someone should. That's her decision to make, but he's not up for primary until 2028, so we have a lot of work to do between now and 2020.
Didn't these idiots know Project 2025 was a thing in the first place? Why did they speak against it? We did speak against Project 2025. The reality of Project 2025 is it's simply the Republican Party. This has always been my problem, and I've said this for many, many years. In fact, let me just pull up my Twitter account real quick and see if I can find me saying something. Like, I've said this shit many, many times, but it's like, fuck, what would I say? What did I say? It's just like, Okay, maybe it may be too hard to find exactly what I wrote, but I'll just restate it now, which is there is no difference between Trump and Republicans. Trump is the Republican Party, but the Democratic Party has operated on the idea that there is a different thing from the Republicans, the good Republicans, which is probably the majority of them, right? And evil MAGA Republicans. When in reality, the entire Republican Party is MAGA Republicans now. But the Democrats refuse to attack the Republican Party because they don't want to attack the Republican Party brand. But the Republicans are very comfortable attacking the Democratic Party brand. And that's, ladies and gentlemen, why the Democratic Party brand is so worthless. Because the Democrats have made it so. Instead of attacking the Republicans, instead of attacking the rich and attacking billionaires and attacking the status quo, the Democratic Party has become the party of, we kind of like Republicans and the status quo ain't so bad. How is that ever going to win anyone over?
To make that happen. My thing is the main thing we need is constituents in states like New York, constituents in all the places where the senators voted with Republicans on this continuing resolution.
Both New York senators did, Gillibrand and Schumer.
Also. We need people to stand up, go to their offices, make calls. You can join a group like Indivisible, Move On, Working Families Party, the DSA. There are many groups getting involved, and I think that Democratic leaders need to hear way more from their constituents. They snatched the ball from grassroots Democrats on this. Grassroots Democrats were ready to make a play here, ready to march in one direction, and Hakeem Jeffries had the House unified around something, and then Chuck Schumer divided Democrats, and now we're spending today all over the news talking about Chuck Schumer's surrender, his blunder, instead of talking about what Elon Musk is doing to the government.
So in this last minute, what can ordinary people do who aren't Congress members, who aren't senators? What difference does it make what actions people take?
I think senators and members of Congress need to hear way more from their constituents about the dangers of what it means for Senate Democrats to give up on this. People should be calling their senators, their members of Congress. People should be showing up to their office. They can go to websites like indivisible.org. They can join their local Working Families Party or DSA chapter. They can nominate a candidate through Justice Democrats. But the number one thing that I think people need to do is call their member of Congress and tell them that they don't think Chuck Schumer is up to the job, and they're angry at what his decision was to sell out grassroots Democrats in order to fund and support the Trump government, which they've warned us is an existential crisis to our country.
And Schumer's fear that it would be called the Schumer shutdown, and that a shutdown could even give more power to the executive?
I was so surprised that the federal union representing federal workers said that they were against Schumer's decision on this.
But by the way, chat, what do the federal workers know about what federal workers want? Chuck Schumer is there. Chuck Schumer is wiser than those fucking disgusting unions. That's the abundance agenda.
These unions don't take these decisions lightly. And so when the union representing federal workers are saying, we are already experiencing a government shutdown and we need you to fight.
We want to thank you, Waleed Shahid, for joining us. We'll link to your new article, Schumer Says Trump is an Existential Threat, Then Surrenders Anyway. That does it for our show. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks for joining us.
Pete Hegseth removed Colin Powell's name from a list of notable Americans? Pete Hegseth removed Colin Powell's name from the list of notable Americans buried at Arlington National Cemetery. Hegseth also removed the names of every person of color and every woman on the same list. Only white men were left in place. You serve a white supremacist fascist state? You think they're going to reward you? You're not on the team, bro. You're not on the team. There was a UN Security Council meeting on the Middle East a little bit earlier today. I wanted to watch this clip.
I thank the representative of Panama for the statement, and I give the floor now to the representative of China.
President, I thank ASG Kiari for the briefing. I also thank Mr. Sharabi for his statement. We express our sympathy for what you have been through and your pain of losing loved ones. 15 months of conflict have made Gaza unrecognizable and caused unimaginable suffering upon many people. We sincerely hope that all that suffering will come to an end, that all hostages and those held captive will be promptly released, and that peace will be restored in Gaza. Yet the developments in the situation have proven otherwise.
以色列从3月17日开始
Since March the 17th, Israel has begun to carry out large-scale airstrikes and resumed hostilities in Gaza, leading to the collapse of the ceasefire agreement and causing more suffering and deaths. China expresses serious concern over this.
把加沙置于炮火威胁之下。
Putting Gaza under the threat of gunfire will probably not make the hostages safer. In fact, we hear that some families of the hostages are also greatly worried that the resumption of fighting will put the hostages in greater danger and hope that the ceasefire will be maintained, which would be conducive to the early return of the hostages to their homes.
残酷事实已经证明，
The brutal reality has shown that achieving a permanent ceasefire is the best way to save lives and get the hostages home.
我们敦促以色列
We urge
放弃
Israel
使用武力的执
to
念，
abandon
停止对加沙的
the
军事行动。
obsession with the use of force and stop its military
希
operation
望
on
停
Gaza.
火协议的保障国
We hope that the
秉持
guarantors of the
公正、
ceasefire
负
agreement
责任
will
的态
adopt
度，
a just and
采取行
responsible
动，
attitude
推
and
动
take
停火协议
action
3阶段
to
连贯落实，
promote
在
the
加沙实现
continuous
持久
implementation of the three-phased ceasefire towards a permanent ceasefire
加
in
沙民
Gaza.
众在躲避战火
The
的同时，
civilians, the
正在
people in
遭受
Gaza,
严峻的
while
人道
fleeing
灾
the
难
fighting,
和
are
流
yet
离失
again
所
being
之苦。
subject to
以色列
humanitarian
先后切
catastrophe
断加沙
and
物资准入
displacement.
和
Israel
便
has
利供应，
successfully
并在
access
多
for
地
aid
发布
supplies
强
into
制
Gaza
撤
and
离
the。power supply and
这
issued
是对
orders of forced
200万
evacuation
平民
from
的
multiple
实施的集体
locations
惩罚，
in Gaza. This is
没有任
collective
何
punishment
正
for
当
the
理由。
2 million civilians for which there
禁
is
止人道
no
物资进入加
justification.
沙，可能也
Denying
会使剩余的人质被剥夺
humanitarian
生存下
supplies
去
into
的
Gaza
基本需求。
can deprive the remaining hostages of
以色
their
列作为占领方，
needs to
应该履行
survive.
国际人道法义务，
Israel, as the occupying
立即
power,
解
should
除封
fulfill
锁，
its obligations
全面恢
under
复加沙
IHL,
的人道物资准入。
immediately lift the blockade
我们也
and
重
fully
申
restore
反
access
对
for
任何
humanitarian
针
supplies
对联合
into
国人
Gaza.
员
We
和人道
also
工作者的袭
oppose
击。
any attacks on UN personnel and
主席，
humanitarians.
每个人的生命
President,
都是宝
the
贵的。
life of every individual is
巴勒斯坦人
precious.
民
The
和以色列人
Palestinian
民
people and the Israeli
享有
people have
平等的
equal
生存权
rights
利
to
和
survival
发展权
and
利。
development.
巴以冲突
The
几十年循
decades-long
环往复，
cycles of Palestinian
让
and
双方
Israeli
几代人
conflict
生
have
活在阴影之
caused
中。
generations on both sides to live under the shadow.
只有全面落实两国方
Only by
案，
fully
实
implementing
现
the
巴勒斯坦
two-state
独立
solution
建
and
国，
achieving the
实现
independent
巴以
statehood
两
of
国和
Palestine
平共处，
and
才
achieving
能持久保障
peaceful
巴勒斯坦
coexistence
人民
between the two
和以
states of
色列人
Palestine
民
and
的安
Israel
全和福祉。
can we ensure the
我们呼吁
lasting
国际社
security and
会
well-being of the
加大努力，
Palestinians and Israelis.
推进
We
落
call
实
upon
两
the
国方案的
international
政治
community
进
to
程。
step up efforts in advancing the political process of the two-state
中方
solution.
将发挥建设性作
China
用，
will play a
为恢
constructive
复
role
中东地区和平，
to
实现巴勒斯坦
restore
问题
peace in the
全
Middle
面、
East
公正、
and achieve
持
a
久解决，
comprehensive, just,
做
and
出
lasting
不懈努
solution
力。
to the Palestinian. Thank you, President.
And that is why, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is the problem with the Chinese position, because their position is, oh, we should just let international law work. Israel's violating international law a bunch, but we need to let international law work. And it's like, well, international law is not going to work if Israel can openly violate it with no meaningful punishment being meted out by the international system. That's the crisis we're in, because China, their position is very fucking milquetoast. You know, they openly acknowledge that Israel is committing crimes against humanity, violating international law, targeting, you know, the Palestinians with collective punishment. And then they're like, well, you know, we should have a two-state solution and, you know, we should return to peace. And it's like, well, Israel, what's the incentive for Israel to do that? There's no incentive. It's being supported by the United States every step of the way. Bernie Sanders tells Reed Epstein that he wants some people to run as independents outside the Democratic Party. This will make the anti-Bernie crowd furious, but Dan Osborne, running well ahead of Harris in New York, Nebraska Senate last year, kickstarted that discussion. Why not do everyone? Why not start a new party? You know, like, give me a fucking break. The Democratic Party is... this is an acknowledgement that the Democratic Party's approval rate is so shit and so garbage that Bernie Sanders acknowledges that for many people, the best route is to run not as a non-Democrat. Well, then why not run as a new party? A progressive party? Why are you expecting some individual guy who nobody knows who the fuck they are to suddenly get name recognition for their independent run? How does that even make sense? That's the advantage of having a party. We should, restart start a workers' party, start a labor party, restart the progressive party. I don't give a fuck. Like, literally, this is it. The reason why you are a member of a party is so people know what you stand for. And the problem is nobody knows what the Democratic Party stands for. They just know they don't like the Democrats. The USSR got sucked into international affairs after Stalin died because they were extra cautious. I mean, China's position is basically, we believe in international law. That's their position. We believe that the Palestinians have the right to have a state, but we also don't want to, they don't advocate for the destruction of Israel. That is Israel. That is the China's position. And it's quite frankly, I mean, it's milquetoast.
China's relationship with Palestine has gone through a cycle. Like during the Maoist period, it was much more closer relations, and pro-Palestine education was institutionalized in Chinese.
Dude, fix your smoke detector.
What is happening right now with this presidential attack on judges?
People have told me from the jump, from November 5th when he was elected, that the courts.
All right, chat. If you have a smoke detector that's chirping in your apartment or office right now, I need you to go and get yourself a 9-volt battery and fucking replace it. That's just embarrassing. That's just fucking embarrassing. Mal called Israel the imperial outpost in West Asia, just like Taiwan is the imperial outpost in the East. That's exactly right.
Would save us, that the courts would restrain him, that the courts would be the final guardrail preventing his military dictatorship. And I have said from the jump that the courts will not save us, that they cannot save us because they cannot enforce their own decisions. The executive enforces the court's decisions. And if you have an executive like Trump who is willing to ignore court orders, then there's nothing courts can do. My response to Trump violating a court order, violating multiple court orders, is the people have to lead because the courts will not do it. The courts cannot do it. You want to free Khalil? We need to go to Jeddah and free Khalil. Like, that's what it takes. It's not going to happen because a judge writes something down on a piece of paper. Trump is just going to ignore it.
What is happening right now with this presidential attack on judges?
People have told me from the jump, from November 5th when he was elected, that the courts would save us, that the courts would restrain him, that the courts would be the final guardrail preventing his military dictatorship. And I have said from the jump that the courts will not save us, that they cannot save us because they cannot enforce their own decisions. The executive enforces the court's decisions. And if you have an executive like Trump who is willing to ignore court orders, then there's nothing courts can do. My response to Trump violating a court order, violating multiple court orders, is the people have to lead because the courts will not do it. The courts cannot do it. You want to free Khalil? We need to go to Jeddah and free Khalil. Like, that's what it takes. It's not going to happen because a judge writes something down on a piece of paper. Trump is just going to ignore it.
What is happening right now with this presidential attack on judges?
People have told me from the jump, from November 5th when he was elected, that the courts would save us, that the courts would restrain him, that the courts would be the final guardrail preventing his military dictatorship. And I have said from the jump that the courts will not save us, that they cannot save us because they cannot enforce their own decisions.
I'm sorry, chat. I wasn't listening. I should have just brought up the Ellie Mistal video. I think I have it open. Oh, maybe I don't. Oh, no, it's right here.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org.
Oh, yeah, Executive Order 1488. Yeah, did you guys see this? Orders each executive agency head to submit a report to the president on actions to combat anti-Semitism and analyze pending complaints related to campus anti-Semitism occurring after October 7th, 2023. Can you imagine if somebody did this for Islamophobia? Can you imagine? Or racism? That's DEI shit. But it's okay if it is for defending an Israeli apartheid state. Pathetic. As Secretary Hesleth has said, DEI is dead, and the Defense Department discriminatory equity ideology is a form of woke cultural Marxism that has no place in our military. It divides the force, erodes unit cohesion, and interferes with the service's core war-fighting mission. We are pleased by the rapid compliance across the department with the directive removing DEI content from all platforms. In the rare cases that content is removed, either deliberately or by mistake, that is clearly outlined out of the clearly outlined scope of the directive, we instruct the components and they correct the content accordingly. They removed articles about Jackie Robinson, Navajo code talkers, Japanese American 442nd Combat Regiment, Black Medal of Honor recipients, and training videos featuring the Tuskegee Airmen. Starting to think this isn't about DEI. No, of course it's about DEI. Of course it's about DEI. And I assume a lot of that stuff is going to be put back as people complain because it looks bad. But the larger way it operates is target this stuff first, ask questions later. And if people don't complain, it's deleted. And if it complains and you think you could fight them off, fight them off. And if they complain and it makes you look bad, just say it was a mistake and put it back. It's all about targeting minorities. That's the main idea that they want to communicate. GOP chair is very concerned over a report of Trump changing military commands. Republican chairs of the House and Senate Armed Services Committee or issued a joint statement Wednesday criticizing the idea of the U.S. drastically changing its military combatant command structure, saying they will not accept those changes without coordination with Congress and other agencies. That the Pentagon is considering giving up its role as NATO's supreme allied commander Europe as part of restructuring of commands and headquarters. U.S. combatant commands are the tip of the American warfighting spear. Therefore, we are very concerned about reports that claim the Defense Department is considering unilateral changes on major strategic issues, including significant reductions to U.S. forces stationed abroad, absent coordination with the White House and Congress, the two chairs said. Is Trump considering withdrawing American troops from Germany? We support President Trump's effort to, and the UK and Italy and Turkey. We support President Trump's efforts to ensure our allies and partners increase their contributions to strengthen our alliance structure. We support continuing America's leadership abroad. As such, we will not accept significant changes to our warfighting structure that are made without a rigorous interagency process, coordination with combatant commanders and the Joint Staff, in collaboration with Congress. Such moves risk undermining American deterrence around the globe and detracting from our negotiating positions with America's adversaries, they continued. The U.S. has had a 4-star general oversee NATO military operations in Europe for 75 years. The current Supreme Allied Commander Europe, Army General Christopher G. Cavoli, is also the head of U.S. European Command and has overseen support to Ukraine. Yeah, Pentagon restores Navajo code talkers web pages after outcry. Yeah, exactly. ESPN baseball expert blasts DOD over removal of Jackie Robinson article. Yeah, see, this is all real shit. Okay, Bernie Sanders. Democratic leaders willing to risk party damage with Bernie, but Bernie Sanders has an idea for the left. Don't run as Democrats. The Vermont senator, who has long had a tense relationship with the Democratic Party, suggested in an interview that more progressives should join him in running as independents. Please have it. Let the interview just be them talking and not an AI voice, please.
Bernie Sanders has an idea for the left. Don't run as Democrats. This article is by Reed J. Epstein and read by an automated voice. Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont has a message for his fellow progressives. Why don't you shed the
Democratic label and run as an independent the way he does? The problem with running as an independent is nobody knows who the fuck you are. That's the problem with running as an independent. Nobody knows who the fuck you are. It doesn't mean it can't be done. It's just even harder than running as a member of a party, which is why a new party is a good idea. Because if there's, I'll explain it to you very simply. If there's a new party, let's call it the Progressive Party, right? Bernie Sanders starts a new party. It's called the Progressive Party. Everybody who runs as a member of the Progressive Party, Bernie Sanders endorses you. Well, then everybody who likes Bernie Sanders, they can go, oh, did you hear Bernie started a new party? It's called the Progressive Party. Oh, there's a guy running in the Progressive Party. Bernie must like him. And so right off the bat, instead of you having 0% name recognition, you at least have like, okay, he agrees with Bernie Sanders and I like Bernie, right? It's an easy, it costs nothing, and it gives people a quick way to explain who you are. Now, if you run as an independent, then it's like, oh, there's an independent? What does that guy think? And you don't know what he thinks, and you have to go figure it out. And there's such a much higher of a barrier of of knowledge. And that's what happens with, it's the same shit with the Democrat. That's why people they vote Republican, because it's like, oh, he's a Republican, he must support Trump. I support Trump. Oh, he's a Democrat, oh, he must support Obama. That worked in 2008. It didn't work in 2010. It just doesn't, it's just harder to do. Mr. Sanders, and by the way, if members of the Progressive Party, they could caucus with the Democrats. They could say, okay, I've been elected as a progressive, but I'll offer myself, I'll vote for, you know, whichever leader. That is a thing. They could do that. They don't have to be independent to caucus with the Democrats. Like, it's just a silly idea to just run as an independent, because you're not building up a brand. And human beings respond to ideas and brands. That's the one thing capitalists figured out that was right. When I go to the store to buy a soda, do I want to buy the Sam's Club soda, or do I want to buy Mountain Dew Code Red? You're much more likely to want to have a Mountain Dew Code Red than you are Sam's Club's Code Amber, right? Because, like, you don't know if that shit's any good. Mr. Sanders' admonition came in an interview with the New York Times on the eve of the 3-day 5-city swing through western states alongside Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York. He predicted that they would draw tens of thousands of people to rally against President Trump, Elon Musk, and the influence of billionaires on the American government. One of the aspects of this tour is try to rally to get people engaged in the political process and run as independents outside the Democratic Party. He's halfway there. This is actually a good sign, though. In all seriousness, he's halfway there. If you're saying run outside the Democratic Party, why not run on a unified platform as a different party? Okay, let's make a tweet on this, chat. It's time for us to make a tweet. The problem with Bernie Sanders' idea of just running as an independent is that it requires every candidate educate the entire electorate about who they are, what they believe. A new progressive party could use the brand recognition that Bernie has built to earn support. That's it. Like, the idea of just going like, oh, I'm going to be an independent, it's crazy. If there's a slate of 50 or 100 or 200 or 300 or 400 people who are running for office as a progressive candidate, instantaneously, that's going to get a national attention. And they may not win. I mean, most of them are probably not going to win. But the moment you do that, the moment you start saying to people there is an alternative, that's when you could start to, people just instantaneously will get a lot more attention and a lot more clout because they're part of that movement. Did you give a shout out to Bernie Sanders? I mean, shit, I've been following. I mean, I used to get more viewers than that channel back in 2020. Oh, did I typo? Oh, you could say every candidate educate the entire elect. That's fine. That's grammatically fine. All right, let's get back to reading the article. Mr. Sanders said in an interview on Wednesday, there's a lot of great leadership all over this country at the grassroots level. We've got to bring that forward. And if we do that, we can defeat Trumpism and transform the political situation in America. The suggestion that would-be leaders to the left should abandon the Democratic Party picks at a political scab that never fully healed. Mr. Sanders, 83, a longtime independent, has a tense yet codependent relationship with the party for decades. While he's never accepted the Democratic label for himself, he is a member of the Senate Democratic Caucus and has run under the party brand when it was politically expedient, including his two bids for the presidential nomination. In 2017, he waged a hard-fought but ultimately futile effort to install an ally to lead the Democratic National Committee. In 2011, Mr. Sanders said during a radio interview that it would be a good idea if President Obama faced some primary opposition for his 2012 re-election. The Vermont senator said at the time that he could not do it himself because he was not a Democrat. But that did not stop him from seeking the Democratic presidential nomination in 2016, when he emerged from the relative obscurity to nearly topple Hillary Clinton, and again in 2020 when he was the last major Democratic primary rival to Joseph R. Biden Jr. In each contest, Mr. Sanders' lack of party affiliation bubbled beneath the surface and drew pointed pushback from his primary rivals. Mrs. Clinton, during an interview with Politico in 2016, described Mr. Sanders as a relatively new Democrat, and in fact, I'm not even sure he is one. She added, he's running as one, so I don't know quite how to characterize him. 4 years later, Mr. Biden, days before his fourth place finish in the Iowa caucuses, took a similar swipe at Mr. Sanders. I'm a Democrat, he told reporters outside of Dairy Queen. He says he's not. He says he's not registered as a Democrat to the best of my knowledge. Mr. Sanders' remarks this week came at a moment of rising anger toward Democratic leaders and a tarnished public image for the party. A CNN poll released this week found 52% of Democrats believe their leaders were steering the party in the wrong direction. Among the public overall, the party's favorability rating was just 29%. the lowest level since the network's polling firm began asking the question in 92. Another poll came out. It was at 27%. Ken Martin, the chairman of the Democratic National Committee, declined to comment on Mr. Sanders' remarks. During the interview on Wednesday, Mr. Sanders repeatedly criticized the influence of wealthy donors and Washington consultants on the party. He said that while Democrats had been a force for good on social issues like civil rights, women's rights, and LGBTQ rights, they have failed on economic concerns he has dedicated his political career to addressing. If there's any hope for the Democratic Party, it's that they're going to have to reach out, open the doors, and let the working class people in. They're not. Go read the fucking abundance agenda shit. It's double down. It's double down on trashing economically downscale people. Like, go read the abundance agenda shit. It is elitism. It is neoliberalism. It is third way all over again. They're all falling for it again. Like, give me a break. If there's any hope for the Democratic Party, it's that they're going to have to reach out, open the doors, and let working class people in, let working class leadership come into the party. If not, people will be running as independents, I think, all over the country. That's not the right call. Even if you run as a progressive party and you later decide you want that party to remerge with the Democratic Party, that's fine. And we do that. But we do that from a position of strength, not from a position of a bunch of people running as independents and losing. Because that's what will happen, because it's a lot harder to run as an independent than part of a larger organization. Has he ever crafted or broken major legislation? Yes. Has he ever moved a coalition to build a major initiative forward? The answer is yes. He was the author and the main legislative person behind Barack Obama's signature piece of legislation in his second term, which was the VA bill, which is why Bernie Sanders was handed the first pen. You're just stupid. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. On this, Bernie is simple, mathematically wrong. Splitting the left. Why would it split? You're gonna vote for a fucking Pete Buttigieg? I would love all the progressives to start their own party. That way I could resume donating to Democratic Party. Right now, I only give to the Democratic Majority for Israel. Sanders split the vote. How did he split the vote? He was endorsing and campaigning for both Biden and Hillary. I fundamentally just think that this idea is just foolish, and it represents a failure of leadership. Either you say the Democratic Party is unreformable, or you bow down. That's the only choices. You skipped a center PA person saying they want a third party. Oh yeah, of course. You're not entitled to my vote. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, unless a Democrat is a leftist, I'm never voting for them again. Like, it's just not going to happen. Like, it is what it is.
The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
Are you going to stream late to react to the Bernie thing?
Supreme
Well, we'll
Court
probably watch it
Justice
tomorrow.
John Roberts has issued a rare statement Tuesday criticizing calls by President Trump and his allies to impeach federal judges that rule against him. Chief Justice Roberts wrote, quote, "For more than 2 centuries, it's been established that impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreement concerning a judicial decision. The normal appellate review process exists for that purpose," end quote. Chief Justice Roberts' statement came after Trump repeatedly attacked U.S. District Judge, that's federal Judge James Boasberg, who ordered the Trump administration to stop using the 1798 Alien Enemies Act to deport immigrants. It has only been used 3 times before in U.S. history, those times during war. On Saturday, the administration ignored Boasberg's order to turn around 3 deportation flights bound for a maximum security, privately run prison in El Salvador. One social media post, Trump called for the impeachment of Boasberg, who he described as, quote, radical left lunatic of a judge and a troublemaker and an agitator. Now, this is the federal judge who ordered the release of Hillary Clinton's emails, just to give you a sense of who Boasberg is. Numerous Trump officials have openly threatened to defy court orders. This is Trump's so-called border czar, Tom Homan, speaking on Fox News.
I'm proud to be a part of this administration. We're not stopping. I don't care what the judges think. I don't care what the left thinks. We're coming.
White House advisor Stephen Miller appeared on CNN Monday and said Judge Boasberg has no authority to make his ruling on the 1798 Alien Enemies Act.
This judge violated the law. He violated the Constitution.
So do you
he defied
think that the
system of government that we have in this country.
During a hearing on Monday, Judge Boasberg accused the administration of adopting an approach of, quote, we don't care, we'll do what we want, unquote. This all comes as the Trump administration continues to face more setbacks in court. On Monday, a federal judge blocked President Trump's transgender military ban. Another federal judge ruled Elon Musk's efforts to dismantle USAID likely violated the Constitution in multiple ways. Trump responded to the Musk ruling on Fox News.
We will be appealing it. We have rogue judges that are destroying our country.
As fears of a constitutional crisis grow, we're joined by Elie Mystal, the nation's justice correspondent. His new piece is headlined, Trump is trying to create his own personal legal strike force. Elie's also author of the upcoming book, Bad Law, 10 Popular Laws That Are Ruining America. Elie, thanks for coming back to Democracy Now! What is happening right now with this presidential attack on judges?
We live in a fascist dictatorship. That's what's happening right now.
Pittsburgh sort of looks like it has tall buildings because it thinks cities are supposed to have them. Pittsburgh used to have one of the most economically rich cities in America. I think at one point it was like the 10th largest city in America or something. I'd have to go look and see what its all-time high was. But like the reason why it's so dense is, number one, there are 3 rivers that are, and it's surrounded by mountains. So it forces a confluence that's very dense.
Now. That's what it feels like. This is where we are. There's not a coming constitutional crisis. We are in the constitutional crisis right now. Because what do we have? How can we call ourselves a democracy? How can we call ourselves a nation of laws if one man and one man alone, Donald Trump, is able to defy the other 2 branches of government? And that's what we have here. And that's what Trump is promised to do, and that's what he is, in fact, doing. Amy, you played the clip. You mentioned John Roberts' statement, and you rightly pointed out that it is rare for John Roberts to say anything at all. But let's look at what the man said, and let's look at what the man didn't say. Right? It was one of the weakest statements that he could have possibly made. He's running around with his, clutching his pearls over, like, don't impeach federal judges. That's wrong. He didn't say nothing about actually following the orders given by those federal judges that Roberts doesn't want impeached, right? He didn't say anything about Trump's blatant violation of multiple federal court orders. He didn't say anything about that at all. So again, Roberts is not your friend. Roberts is not the one coming to help us. He's as afraid as, I believe that Roberts is as afraid of Trump as the rest of the government
Elie is very anti-Bernie.
And
he's like, Ezra Klein.
I don't know any definition of fascist dictatorship other than the one we are all experiencing right now.
And Elie, in terms of the qualitative difference between the current situation and past confrontations between the executive branch and the courts, of course, back in the 1800s, there was a famous battle between Andrew Jackson and the Supreme Court over the relative sovereignty of the Native American peoples. And FDR had his conflicts with the courts. But this is, as you say, multiple federal judges all around the country coming up ruling against the Trump administration. What's your sense of the difference between this and all prior historical battles?
Well, here the Trump administration is directly saying, you just played that ghoul Stephen Miller, directly saying that the federal judges don't have authority over this administration. Right. So that's number one. That's the biggest break from the past. They're not even pretending to acknowledge the authority of the federal judiciary to restrain or control this administration. Right. So that's number one. Number two, when you look at those historical examples, you're talking for the most part about military funding, right? You're talking about, Andrew Jackson saying the judges made his order, now let him enforce it, as he's committing genocide against the Native Americans. You're talking about Teddy Roosevelt sending the Navy halfway out into the Pacific and saying, like, Congress, I'm sure you will fund them to bring them back, won't you? You're talking about the executive branch executing its large control, the commander in chief exercising his large control over the American military. This ain't that, all right? This isn't a military situation. This is Congress appointed money for USAID, put the money back on, turn the money back on, and Trump saying, no, I ain't. Absolutely not. This is a judge saying, turn the planes around and bring those people back, and Trump saying, nope, won't do that either. This is straight up, again, this is straight up authoritarianism. This is straight up one man's whim alone controls the country. As you played, you've got his border czar out there literally saying he's not going to respect judicial opinions. You've got Stephen Miller saying that. You've got Trump.
Well, I mean, there you have it. That is the end of quote checks and balances, right? The Democrats gave up the legislative check and balance when they passed the continuing resolution, and the Republican and Trump is saying, I'm going to ignore the courts. So that's the judicial check and balance. Checks and balances are over. You're living under King Trump. That's the reality. You're living under King Trump.
Saying that, and that's what's different from the past. If anybody thinks that there's a equivalency here, I'd like to just remind people that I am old enough to remember when the Supreme Court unconstitutionally, in my mind, outlawed abortions. I'm old enough to remember that. I'm old enough to remember President Joe Biden not going into Texas and being like, abortions for everybody, right? I remember Joe Biden being a weak, pathetic fucking loser too. What's your point? Heads you win, tails I lose. The story of the Democratic Party. Biden respecting the Supreme Court's ridiculous.
Oh, I'm sorry. Heads you win, tails I lose. The story of the Democratic Party.
Order when it came to a woman's right to choose.
Oh, by the way, chat, VO posted the first part of their model reveal. Wow. They're finally upgrading from the sussy. There you go, chat. Go like that for VO. Out of appreciation for all the stuff that they have done and help them boost their likes. It's always, whenever you're starting a new account, the early attention is always huge. So help VO out. Help out somebody who stood next to Palestinians early on when it was way safer to just be talking about other shit. Is VO going to have two accounts? I think VO is just going to transition their main account over to they have a VO tubing account. VO's model has thigh physics. That's true. That's the next part. 420 likes. That's when the thigh physics come out. All right, let's finish this Ellie video.
And so I would just contrast Biden's restraint when it came to judges versus what we're seeing from the Trump administration.
I also wanted to ask you about Trump's weaponizing of the Justice Department, even though he claims the Justice Department was weaponized against him. In his speech last week at the Great Hall at the Justice Department, he said, quote, as the chief law enforcement officer in our country, I will insist upon and demand full and complete accountability for the wrongs and abuses that have occurred. He was there with the head of the FBI, Kash Patel, and Attorney General Pam Biondi in attendance.
Yeah, I mean, this is Trump doing what he promised to do. This is a dictator acting like a dictator, right? This is a man personally taking control of the law enforcement apparatus of the United States to go after his political enemies. That's what he promised to do. That is, in fact, what he's doing. I'm surprised people are surprised. What'd you think the man was going to do? Follow the law? He didn't even promise to do that. So, like, why are people surprised that he's not doing it now, right? He went to the DOJ, and look, Juan, to be clear, I don't have any pearls to clutch. I'm not one of these people who's like, oh my God, he talked to the Attorney General. Why? Even though, if we're going to look historically, there is supposed to be a wall of separation between the DOJ and the President of the United States. Again, to go back to Joe Biden, he wouldn't even call Merrick Garland to follow up on whether or not he was doing anything about the people who attacked the Capitol on January 6th. But putting that aside, Trump went to the DOJ to declare, to announce, to confirm that he intends to use the Department of Justice to go after his political enemies, especially the lawyers. Trump called out a number of lawyers during that speech: Jack Smith, Andrew Weissman, Norm Eisen, specifically saying that he is going to use his lawyers at the DOJ because they're his now, not ours. They work for him, not the people in the United States of America. Trump made that entirely clear. He's going to use his lawyers to go after the lawyers he believes stand up and oppose him. That was the upshot of his speech at the Department of Justice. And what did Pam Bondi do? What did Kash Patel do? They sat there and they clapped like seals. They clap like the good little sycophants they are, and we can assume that they will carry out Trump's unlawful, lawless orders to bring political prosecutions against the lawyers that Trump believes oppose him. He said at one point during that speech, CNN and MSDNC write 97.6% bad about me. Grammatically, that's normal Trump, but politically and legally, he's saying that you should be able to go after the media for writing bad things about him. Again, if this isn't authoritarianism, if this isn't dictatorship, if this isn't fascism, then I don't know what those words mean.
So, Elie Mystal, I want to ask you about the judges' rulings that the administration directly defied. You have the case of the detainees being sent to El Salvador, to a supermax prison, when the judge directly said, turn those planes around, and there was one still on the tarmac. And you have the case of Dr. Rasha Alawiya, the Brown University professor, the kidney specialist. Another judge said she is not to be deported. They deported her anyway. If you can respond to these two cases, and then the case of Mahmoud Khalil, who is now calling himself a political prisoner. He's in an ICE detention facility in Jena, Louisiana. He was one of those who protested the U.S. support for the Israeli war on Gaza. Can you talk about all of this?
So, Amy, people have told me from the jump, from November 5th when he was elected, that the courts would save us, that the courts would restrain him, that the courts would be the final guardrail preventing his military dictatorship. And I have said from the jump that the courts will not save us, that they cannot save us because they cannot enforce their own decisions. The executive enforces the court's decisions. And if you have an executive like Trump who is willing to ignore court orders, then there's nothing courts can do. So part of my question, Amy, is to turn it around back on the other people who were telling me for months that the courts would save us. What do y'all got now? What's your plan now? Now that the courts have issued their order and Trump has ignored their orders, what's plan B? Because plan A was the courts saving us, and that was never going to work. My response to Trump violating a court order, violating multiple court orders, is the people have to lead because the courts will not do it. The courts cannot do it. You want to free Khalil? We need to go to Jena and free Khalil. Like, that's what it takes. It's not going to happen because a judge writes something down on a piece of paper. Trump is just going to ignore it. And we saw that with the Venezuelans that he deported illegally after a court told him to turn the plane around. And we saw it with the doctor who we deported, what he said, too quickly for the courts to rule at all. And again, I'll turn it back on John Roberts, who didn't say boo about that, right? Had all the smoke for like, oh, don't impeach my judges. Didn't say boo about Trump refusing to turn the planes around under a direct court order to do so. This is the fascism we are living under. This is what it feels like, folks.
I want to thank you so much, Elie, for being with us. Elie Mystal is the nation's justice correspondent. We will link to your latest article. Trump is trying to create his own personal legal strike force.
All righty, everybody. I'm going to send you over to Hassan because I think the stuff is starting soon. I'm going to send you over to Hassan. I'm excited for the interview, and I'm going to be in the chat anyway, so I might as well just get there early so I can start spamming. Tell him to start a new party and not do this independent bullshit. It doesn't work. It's a dumb idea. All right, everybody, stay safe out there. Thank you for all the support. Here's all my links. Don't forget to like the VO tweet if you have a Twitter, and I'll see you all tomorrow. We'll react. I'll probably do another reaction to all the Bernie shit just so I can mold. All right, everybody, stay safe.
And all victims of oppression, for the tyrants fear your might. Don't cling so hard to your possessions, for you have nothing if you have no rights. So come, brothers and sisters, So comrades, come and rally, for this is the time and place. Join the Central Committee and unite the human race. Break down the billionaire system. Bring down the bourgeoisie. To see the end of capitalism, we must set Luigi free. Demand that health care be provided, as well as housing and food security. We'll build high-speed rails and revolutions with heads of billionaires and solidarity. So come, brothers and sisters, through this struggle we'll carry on. A gift up to Central Committee is one step closer to righting the wrong. So comrades, come and rally, and remember that Hutch owes Mike $1,500 because Mike was fucking right.